from San Francisco. Welcome to TFE Live, number 480, 20 away from show 500 for Friday the 17th of December. Yeah, a lot of you in the comments are saying you think it's going to be a big show. I think it might be as well, because we've got a good friend of ours standing by in Auckland. Haven't talked to him in a long time, actually, but the esteemed James Farmer QC is in Auckland, New Zealand, a member of the squad, doing a long time. He's a QC, he's a lawyer at Queen's Counsel, but a longtime friend and a great yachtsman in his own right. He was keelboat yachtsman of the year in New Zealand a few years ago. But he's the one leading the fight to keep the event in Auckland, along with Mark Dunphy and Hamish Ross and a few others. And we're delighted to have him as our guest today. Julie, I trust you are well?
I am.
Any hot tips?
No.
Okay, we'll get right into this because, as I say, it's going to be quite a show. I'm your host, Tom Ehman, as I'm sure you all know, unless you're brand new here. And if you are, welcome. Welcome to everybody. Let's get to the starting line right off the bat and get into it. We've got three items before we get to Jim Farmer. Doubtless, you're all aware of the big prang, the crash that happened between Sir Ben and Nathan Outeridge in Sail GP on their Saturday. We will be watching. It was their Friday. It's our Friday now. It's their Saturday, and they're about to race on their second day on Saturday. And some have said that Sail GP has helped to get AC 37 off to a bang because, as many of you know, Nathan Outeridge has signed with Emirates Team New Zealand, and of course, Sir Ben Ainslie is the skipper and the leading light, at least of the sailing program, of the British team Ineos Britannia. This was a huge collision, knocking the bow off Nathan's boat. Sir Ben cuts off Nathan's nose, and it ended Ben's racing for the weekend, and which remains to be seen whether they can repair the Japanese boat sufficiently to get it back, Nathan's boat, and we will find out hopefully during the show yet today. We think, by the way, Julie, that we're getting Jody Shields, who's up and at him early, and maybe Pedro Foiling Sailor, Peter Stevenson, are going to come on after the segment with Jim in about an hour's time. And we'll get a report from Sydney, from Sail GP, from Jody and from Pedro Foiling Sailor. This was the release, at least from the U.S. team. I found this more interesting than the more sterile Sail GP release. Sydney dated today. The U.S. Sail GP team had a front row seat to a disastrous collision last night at the Australian Sail Grand Prix presented by KPMG between Great Britain and Japan, the collision. Two of its closest rivals throughout Sail GP's Season 2. This, of course, is the penultimate event in Sydney. One more to go. Just before the start of Race 3, as the American-British F50s were fighting for a starting position, Great Britain Sail GP team driver, I do not like them using driver. I wish they'd use skipper or helm, but you get the idea. They're trying to make it, I guess, appear to be more Formula One-esque. Driver. Skipper, helmsman, failed to see, Ben Ainslie failed to see Japan below him, resulting in a last-second avoidance maneuver. The British F50 leapt, it did indeed, into the air, its daggerboard cleanly slicing off the entire front of Japan's boat, at least on the starboard side. And as they came down on their hull on the starboard pontoon, and causing extensive damage to both boats. Thank God, no one was injured or worse, because it could have been bad. In fact, I've got the video. Have a look at some pretty amazing video from 3 or 4 different angles.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Watch these guys. Bow's falling off. The bow is falling off. Awesome.
Oh.
So they stuffed looks like a fender or two up there. This is just more B-roll now from today's racing. And it's going to be interesting to see who are the big guns. It's obviously coming down to. It'll be interesting to see if Nathan is back on the water today, Saturday, for the second and final day. Tom Slingsby of the Australian team looking very sharp. Jimmy Spithill, the Australian now, the American, steering for the American team, is also looking tough. And Phil Robertson, sailing for the Spanish, had a remarkably good day as well. Let's quickly, Julia, go to the comments here. Ricardo Labata, haven't seen you on in a while. He's on from Rio de Janeiro. Murray Lamont saying, yep, there he is again, Basher Ben. There was, I don't know if did you have a chance to read Magnus Wheatley?
I didn't.
And he said that he was getting texts all through the night and morning after the praying, his morning saying, is Ben too old? Does he need to leave this league and go, just stick with management? Basher Ben. Press release just appeared on FB. Thank you for that. SailGP Andrew Watson is saying SailGP is cool, but I'm afraid it's only a matter of time before someone is killed or seriously injured. Ainsley admitted he couldn't see the other boat, so it's pure luck JPN lived to race another day. Changes are needed now to make the sport safer. Yeah, that won't buffer out, Jeff Ogle is saying. Yeah, Spain did. Stingray is saying up in Seattle, Spain did have a heck of a day. Phil Robertson, the Kiwi, who is steering that team. Fritz Muller's down in Miami. Hello to you and everybody else. We got a lot of comments at the start from people just wishing, saying hi from all over the world. Nice to have you all with us, including Mark Husted. Thank you for your help this morning, Mark. Ken Saban, Toledo, Ohio, is saying good afternoon. Jeff Ogle replying to Andrew Watson. F1 drivers take similar risks, don't they? Yeah, but Jeff, they are rather better these days, thanks to Sid Watkins, the late great Dr. Sid Watkins, the F1 doctor, and all the work that Bernie Ecclestone and others have done to get the safety cages and the halo and yada, yada. They're probably a lot better protected than you. I mean, let me go back and play that. I'll play it again later in the show when we get to, we're going to do a SailGP segment. But watch this. Those guys, they have helmets on, and I guess they have Kevlar vests. Those life jackets, I hope, are Kevlar vests. But, my goodness, Julia, it is
it's jarring.
It's jarring. Andrew Pindar is on. Hi, Andrew. Japan boat is way too damaged. Ben has offered his boat to Nathan for tomorrow. Yeah, SailGP has rules, as I'm sure most of you know, that allow the trading of equipment to keep somebody who was not in the wrong, and obviously Japan was not. Involuntary bowel movement. Swing is saying. I wonder what Jim Farmer thinks of that comment. Involuntary bowel movement. We'll get to Jim in a minute. Don't think it's a Sir Ben issue. Shouldn't it be tactics? I don't know, John Schaefer, Captain Jack Schaefer in Annapolis. Ed Worley, this is not car racing. You have the sails blocking your view. Good point. Stingray of GBR had been 10 feet farther back than exactly. Yikes. They would come down crashing down on the heads and necks of, and the backs, upper backs of those folks. Replying to Andrew Pindar, he did and he shouldn't have. It's racing, but nice gesture. Ever see an F1 team offer Tiger car? Yeah, but Mark, it's a little different because don't forget, the teams have backup cars. The F1 teams have got, they can practically build a car, and maybe not the engine. In fact, not the engine, but they can practically rebuild a car on track overnight. That's been the case for a long time. That's Woolneely? I'm not sure, Ken. I thought I heard that the judges were not going to let Japan sail either way. I don't know, Rob. I did not hear that. And Peter Selwyn saying it's always the driver's responsibility, I suppose. Looking here at Sir Ben, there was a quote that I grabbed. By the way, this is from Magnus's excellent Magnus. Well, this isn't, but I'll get to Magnus in a minute. Ainsley, a four-time Olympic gold medalist, admitted, we just didn't see the other boat. We were focused on the U.S. team, on Jimmy Spithill, an American team, and worried about the top of the starting line. The first time I saw Japan was as we were about to hit them. It's the end of our season in terms of making it to the final race in San Francisco. Well, they'll probably make it here, but he means they won't qualify for the final three. It will be impossible for us to make the final three, I think is what he means. SailGP race officials ruled that the British, because remember, that event is not till the end of March, so they got time to repair boats and so on. And Mark Husted, thank you for all your help this morning, helping to sort out the rules on this. But I guess all the teams do go to San Francisco and compete, but you got to be in the top three to get into the $1 million grand finale. SailGP race officials ruled that the British as the at-fault boat will receive a 6-point event penalty for causing serious damage, plus incur a 2-point penalty on their overall season scoring. So
Ouch.
yeah, right, Julia. That's pretty ouchy, is right.
Yeah.
Now we see. You know who that is, Julia?
Oh, yes.
That is our FOSI Jonathan Frank, who, when I got home, Julia, admittedly, we were at the YC last night having a holiday dinner with some friends and
Right.
celebrating a German friend of ours who's now an American citizen. So we were a little late getting back. And then Jonathan said, "Have you seen the praying? Fire up the studio. We got to have a watch party and talk about it." And
Yeah.
this was, last night at 9 or 10 o'clock when.
Not 9 or 10.
Yeah, it was 9 or 10 our time when this all happened.
Ah.
And of course, at that point, I think I even went back to the club to rescue one of our friends there. Jonathan Frank, thanks for that comment. Just before we move on to Jim, I also want to say that the IRIS, the School of Technology and Trades, it used to be known as the International Yacht Restoration Foundation, but IRIS in Newport, Rhode Island, thanks to one of our FOSIs tipping us off, is having a very cool book sale, holiday book sale. Mark Reed sent me this note from Newport, where he's there doing some holiday shopping, I guess, and maybe partying. For FOSIs, he said, the IRIS Library is having an America's Cup book and yachting maritime book sale this week and probably beyond. It ends, it's said to end tomorrow, but if you call them, I think you might be able to get a book or two. They are selling all of the duplicates they have of different books for next to nothing. And Mark sent this picture. Mark Reed sent this one as well. It's a very cool group. That book is almost unobtainium. You see Newport to Perth, among others. And there's some very cool books there. I don't know how to get them other than to call to them. They say on their Facebook page, today through Saturday, meaning a couple days ago, through tomorrow, join us at the IRIS Maritime Library Holiday Book Sale. That's on Lower Thames Street in Newport. Browse and purchase an array of well-priced books from the late 1800s to today.
Wow.
America's Cup, Regatta, and Yacht Histories and much more are available. Books start at just $2. Perfect book for the bibliophile on your list. That's at IRIS in Newport, that terrific organization there on the harbor. That's looking northwest over the harbor and Goat Island, of course, the Pell Bridge. The only thing I could figure out is to call them on 401-848-5777 to see which books they have and what the price is. I'm sure somebody will help you. And thanks, Mark Reed. Thank you very much for that tip for the FOSI.
Mm-hmm.
He also sent this photo. You recognize that, Julia?
Ah, yes.
I bet you Jim does too. That is the famous and famously good Clark Cookhouse, also owned by a FOSI, who's often on the show watching. And if you have a chance to get to Newport for Christmas in Newport, I was thinking in the shower that we've celebrated Christmas in a lot of different places: Auckland,
Yeah.
Sydney, Perth, Hamburg, Spain, here, there, San Diego, and so on. But it is a special place at Christmas time. And if you can't get there this year, you might put that in your plans for the future and do stop in at the Clark Cookhouse. Now, Julia, for our final segment in the starting line, do you know who this is?
Yes.
Rounding, obviously, Fastnet Light, having
right.
just rounded Fastnet Light, I assume. That is the good doctor. That picture is probably more familiar to most of you. And this segment is not sponsored by Gillette, unlike the John Emmett segment. That's our FOSI, Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, with whom I had a quick talk this morning about the bloody corona and COVID. And he sent this chart, which is a little hard to see, and I wouldn't even try to explain it. But needless to say, because of the Omicron variant, things are spiking. He said, quote unquote, numbers going into orbit here in the UK, he means, and personally, I know many who now have it. The good news is that none seem to be severely affected, and hospital numbers are up only a bit, and deaths not at all. Probably need to track for another couple weeks. He told me you're going to get it here in the States in a big way in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, as we're hearing reports as well. He said nearly all cases that's a typo, in the ICUs, in the intensive care units, are the unvaccinated, which makes the staff very angry. Population very keen to get boosters, but in the UK at least, problems with vaccine supply. Andrew McIrvin, was working at the local vac center today and we only had enough for 200 people. Yesterday, we did a record 680
Wow.
jabs.
Wow. Wow.
When are you getting your booster?
The 3rd. I mean,
Not the 3rd.
23rd.
23rd. So that's in 6 days. 6 days.
Yeah, I
time.
can hardly wait. I've been trying for it.
Thank you, Andrew McIrvin, for that. I hope everybody's staying safe. It looks like we're all going to get this one, and maybe the good news is that we end up with natural immunity, herd immunity, because of
Yes.
getting this apparently not too, at least if you're vaccinated, not too horrible virus. If you want to support us, this is viewer-supported media. As you all know, we like to ask at the top of the show and the bottom, especially in this Christmas season. We've turned the back wall green today, along
Just
with
in case.
the lamp behind Julia and the light underneath. And to put you in the Christmas spirit, hoping that you'll support us on patreon.com/join/sailing illustrated. Give us a few bucks a month, or give us a check, because it helps keep the lights on, the internet going, and us fed, or at least May fed.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, one of our FOSI gave us a $500 contribution a couple days ago. I won't name him unless he wants to put it in the comments and say thank you, Tom. But we thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And he is on here now. Okay, that's the starting line. Let's get into the B block with our longtime and esteemed friend, our FOSI, James Farmer, QC. Jim Farmer, who is a leading yachtsman in New Zealand and beyond. He's often racing up in Australia at that terrific race week, where I took the cup up at Hamilton Island Race Week.
Yeah, that's such a great thing.
Joining us live from Auckland, welcome to the show. First time to the show, Jim Farmer.
Yes, it is, Tom. I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, we're very pleased to have you here. And of course, we're talking about AC 37 and the cup. And your colleague, I guess colleague is, or at least Mark Dunphy, he has been on the show. And of course, Grant Dalton, whom we've both known since forever. And the three of you have been tussling down there on the venue. And there are a lot of people here, our FOSI, a lot of people on TFE Live, who are quite strong supporters of your initiative, Jim, to keep the AC 37 venue in Auckland. Can you, maybe I should read just bring everybody up to speed, and then I'll ask you to tell us what transpired at that meeting at the squadron a week ago now. And I'll start with this statement that I had from you prior to that meeting that you ran on your personal blog, your legal blog, on behalf of the 34 RNZ members that I, Jim Farmer, presented a petition for a special general meeting of the RNZ to consider a motion that the objects of the RNZ rules be amended to add an objective that defenses for the America's Cup, when held by the squadron, would take place in Auckland, full stop. The officers of the squadron appointed the 9th of December last week for that meeting, which was also their AGM, notwithstanding that because of COVID restrictions, the numbers to attend physically and participate in the discussion at the time were limited to 200 spread over 2 rooms, with others required to view by Zoom. Team New Zealand, as we all know, has fixed the 31st of March by when they will announce the venue, having already slipped from September. The New Zealand Herald a couple Saturdays ago now reported that Grant Dalton had been calling RNZ members, this is Jim's writing, who had signed the requisition and persuaded some of them to withdraw their signatures on the basis that if the motion was passed, TNZ would be put into liquidation, and the squadron would be left without a team to continue a defense. A copy of the Herald article can be found by following this link, and you had a link in there. Given that position, I, Jim Farmer, felt it incumbent on me as the representative of those members who had signed the requisition in good faith to go back to them and advise them that, in my view, there was a real prospect that the special general meeting would be undermined by the threats made, that communication has taken place, and I have their authority to withdraw the requisition, which you did in a letter to the Commodore. And then efforts to maintain the defense of the America's Cup in Auckland will continue unabated. In particular, Team New Zealand will continue to be challenged to justify its position that the funding of the event here is not viable. And that was your statement before that meeting. What happened at the meeting?
Well, the annual general meeting was to be held anyway, and but there was, because the SGM requisition had been withdrawn, there was no motion, there was going to be no vote at the AGM, but just a discussion. And the flag officers of the squadron very kindly agreed to allow me to start that discussion by addressing the meeting first and setting out my views. I was followed by Grant Dalton, who then presented a sort of a slideshow, which sought to establish why the funding was not first of all, the amount of funding that he said was needed, 200 million New Zealand for both the team's costs and the event costs, and then why, in his view, the funding was not available in New Zealand, and why, therefore, he had to take the next defence offshore. That was followed then by the matter was then thrown over to the general meeting for comments from the floor. Mark Dunphy came forward, was not allowed to take the rostrum to present his views, but spoke from the floor. And then many other members asked questions or made comments. There was no, as I say, there was no vote put, and that was clear because it was just general business. But my impression of the meeting was that there was a fair degree, first of all, a lack of understanding really of Grant's attempt to show why the holding of the Cup in Auckland was not viable. His presentation was quite hard to follow. Then there were a lot of questions put, a lot of comments made, and my general impression was that there was a fair degree of scepticism and concern around about the proposal, or the not even a proposal, about the statement that the Cup would be taken offshore. That rather contrasted the next day with the Commodore's report to the media that, in his view, there had been, quote, solid support for Team New Zealand taking the event offshore. That certainly wasn't my impression. So, it was a meeting that where points of view were ventilated, but ultimately it was perhaps, a matter of debate as to just what the real mood and feeling of the meeting was. As I say, my impression was that there was a great deal of concern and a lack of any conviction that it was necessary to take the event offshore.
So let's look at the numbers again. Dalton is putting forward, Mr. Dalton is saying 200 million Kiwi, 120 for the team, 80. This is a silly sailboat race. I mean, 80 million for an event. Okay, it's not, I don't mean any disrespect. I love this event. I love our sport, but 80 million to run an event, obviously some of that event money is going then to go fund the team, right?
Yeah, I think that was one thing that came clear. I mean, the $80 million figure, you're quite right, Tom, to express some degree of doubt about that, particularly in Auckland, if the event is to be in Auckland, because as you know, the facilities are there from the last time.
Exactly.
Actually, going right back to the days when Team New Zealand won the Cup in 1995, and when Peter Blake brought it back to Auckland and said, look, we need to make this work for Auckland. We need to have Auckland get a real benefit out of having the Cup here. And he then set about, with the assistance of the Auckland Council and the New Zealand government and others, set about developing the viaduct into what it is today. It's become a wonderful tourist attraction, and that was holding America's Cup there is what drove that. So this last time, something similar in a way. A lot of money spent by the Auckland Council, by the New Zealand government, continuing to develop the facilities around the Auckland waterfront so that the defence that we've just had would be a spectacular event and hopefully would attract a lot of people to come to Auckland, the big boats, the super yachts and all the rest of it. That, of course, as we all know, didn't happen to the extent that had been hoped because of COVID. But the real point is that the facilities are there. And so when you start to ask $80 million, what do you need $80 million for? it's not clear. One thing I took out of some of the things that Grant said, not so much in his presentation, but in answers to questions later, was that he really does anticipate that about half of that 80 million would actually go back into the team. So the team funding would be 120 million plus 40, 160. That was my take on it. I may or may not be totally right on that.
So where do you think the squadron does stand on this? We've got some people, Graham Sweeney has asked a question, and he feels Graham's one of our FOSI and quite prolific and a good guy. He's from Great Britain, from up near Scotland. And he's saying, well, if the squadron is, and there's also the question here coming from Stingray, why is Aaron Young defending Dalt's position so vehemently? And why, if the squadron leadership, if they are wrong and the club is really not behind it, why aren't more members sticking their hands up as you have done? Or are they?
Well, they are. I think I've had a lot of contact from members, either by telephone or by emails, by texts, by all the rest of it. And I don't have any doubt that the membership as a whole really almost desperately want to have the next event held in Auckland. So the question is a good question. Why are the leaders, why is the Commodore and the flag officers and the General Committee of the Yacht Squadron, why are they really appearing to side with Team New Zealand's statement that they need to take the Cup offshore? I think the answer to that is that the squadron has a natural concern, the flag officers and the General Committee have a natural concern that if Team New Zealand did get put into liquidation, which Grant Bolton was threatening if the SGM had gone ahead, then the squadron would be left in the unenviable position of holding the Cup, having to put on the event, not having the funding to do that, perhaps, and therefore having a major problem that they didn't really want to have. And so their objective, I think, has been to support Team New Zealand. But of course, there comes a point where really you have to ask the question, well, support them no matter what, and support them if it goes offshore to some very undesirable place like Saudi Arabia, and maybe come back and talk about that later. But however, having said all of that, I think even the flag officers and the General Committee, they do continue to say, we would really like to have the event here. That is our number one preference. I think the impression I get since the AGM really is that maybe they might be swinging around and thinking, look, let's get in there and just see if the money isn't here. Because
really?
Comments were made.
You think you've made progress since the AGM and that maybe the leadership is coming around? Well,
at the AGM, there were, I think, 2 or 3 members who stood up and spoke and said, look, no one has asked us, the members, for money. We have Mark Dunphy offering $40 million. We have the other sources of funding we know about, the government and so on. But no one has actually asked us. And you know, if they did, whatever the gap that between the 200 million, which Grant says is needed, let's, for the moment, for the purpose of discussion, say, okay, let's run with that figure and not challenge it further, but run with that. Grant says, well, there's a gap of 50 million between the 200 million and all the other sources of funding, including the government, including Mark Dunphy, etc. And what these members at the AGM were saying, well, what about us? No one's asked us for money. And I think the squadron the flag officers may well have taken that on board. And I don't know, I can't say this categorically, but I kind of get a feeling that maybe now there are things going on behind the scene where maybe some members are coming forward and saying, look, we want to help. We want to make this work. And there's no reason why we can't.
Well, yeah, especially, as you said, since the community, the country, the club, everybody was kind of, because of COVID, I won't say robbed, but they were robbed out of the normal Cup opportunity, and we all know how cool the event can be, especially with multiple challenges, which has looked like is now shaping up at least to have 3 good ones, and maybe more. Who knows? And especially if it's in Auckland, one hears that Ernesto wants it to be in Auckland. One hears Prada wants it back in Auckland. Have you heard it? Is that correct? And what do you think is the Druthers of Ineos Britannia?
Yeah, and I think also, American Magic want it back in
for
Auckland.
Sure, American Magic. Yep.
And what we also know, we'll come back to it maybe, that the Americans will not go to Saudi Arabia. So
that also true.
They want it in Auckland.
Yeah, I've heard that in no uncertain terms from any number of yacht clubs, from Terry Hutchinson and others. So I think that's exact. Go ahead.
So I think they want it in Auckland, first of all, because Auckland is a cool place.
Exactly.
Yes.
So perfect place for yacht racing, etc. But secondly, they want to win the cup, but they want to win it from the home waters of the club that holds the cup. You know, winning the cup in some third country, it just does not have the same appeal to them. And I think, you know, almost like sort of Team New Zealand won the cup off Oracle in Bermuda, as you know, it would have been, I think, probably New Zealanders would rather have seen us win that cup in San Francisco, especially after we didn't win it the time before.
Absolutely, and you got a big nod from Julia on this point you've made. We've made that point, as you know, Jim. I've been on on the radio and television down there any number of times and had this comment with this discussion with Mr. Dunphy. I think that ETNZ, is Emirates, by the way, still a sponsor?
I'm told they are. At least they've certainly got the name Emirates in the team name.
That's what I see in here. But I think they run a substantial risk of losing it if they go offshore. But maybe that Daltz doesn't really care at the bottom of his little heart that he just wants to go off, have one more run at this with adequate money, and he perceives the only way to get the adequate money, and maybe that means adequate money for his own pocketbook as well. But let's go back to the squadron, if we may, because I'm a big believer in following the money, as I'm sure you are. Julia certainly is. And if you go follow the money, one hears, tell me or don't, because you've got different laws down there than we do here with respect to defamation and other things. One hears the squadron has been, I won't say bought off, but they have been assured that they are getting 2 or 3 something million Kiwi. If the event goes offshore, that Daltz will be sure that they get that kind of revenue into their own coffers. Is that true, or am I off base?
Well, Dalton did at the AGM. He did say that there was, I think it's called a legacy payment that they had built into their budget for an offshore defence, and that $3 million would go to the squadron, I think, and would be used for perhaps to develop squadron youth training programs, or I don't know what the purpose of it was to be. So I think bought off, I think is an attempt by Team New Zealand to buy off the squadron. To be fair to the squadron, I suspect their position probably is, look, we'd rather have the cup here, but if it ends up going offshore and they say, well, here's $3 million, a goodbye present, well, you wouldn't turn it down.
No, for sure. And people have argued to me, well, Larry left a legacy at Golden Gate Yacht Club when the clubhouse got all spruced up, and spruced up but it was way more than a spruce up. It was redone. Julia, you remember that.
Absolutely.
Redone very nicely. But that was done at Larry's personal expense. He sent his houseman in, he sent his team in that managed all his other properties, and they redid the place. And that was not money coming out of the event. And the other thing, we were very careful here, and in any time that I've been involved in the defense, whether it was in New York, San Diego, San Francisco, here, we were always very careful to bifurcate. As you know, you were on the Challenger Commission that whole time. We were getting set up before, during, and after 07. But we were very careful here in San Francisco. The first thing we did, the first meeting we had after we won in Valencia 2010, in my office, and Russell was there, and Larry was there, and Stephen Barclay, whom you know, Kiwi, we had a chart that we put up, and we said, let's divide the responsibilities between the event and the team, who's going to do what to whom, and then let's take our top people and say who's going to be where. Point is, we didn't have one person as the CEO of both. We had Russell.
Yeah.
Russell was as he should be, was highly influential in both. But if Stephen Barkley and I said this on the show the other day, and Ian Murray, who was the regatta director, said, Russell, we want to do black, and Russell wanted to do white. Well, it might be a shade of gray, but it was going to be a darker gray than what Russell wanted to do. And you got a big problem down there, I think, and I'm sure you agree. But what do you think of one guy being the CEO of both organizations, the team and the
Yeah,
event?
okay. Well, I'm totally with you on that, Tom. And of course, so the situation really is this, that Team New Zealand is owned by a trust. The two trustees, there are two trustees who have half the shares each. One is Grant Dalton, and the other one is a lawyer who is also a director of Team New Zealand. Grant Dalton is the CEO of the event company. He's also, as you know, going back to Team New Zealand, he is the managing director of Team New Zealand. At the moment, there are only two other directors in Team New Zealand. One of them is the lawyer I mentioned, and the third one is Kevin Shoebridge, who works for Grant, Team New Zealand, the COO. So you have a Team New Zealand almost totally controlled by Grant Dalton. And then you had the Event Authority, which had a separate board, but Grant Dalton was the CEO. Now that, you don't actually have to be a lawyer to see the immediate problems of corporate governance that arise there, and which you obviously saw in San Francisco. And indeed, that matter was commented on by some of our leading financial journalists. Fran O'Sullivan, who's top financial journalist with New Zealand Herald, and Patrick Smelly, Business Desk. They just pointed out with a degree of incredulity at the situation of that kind, where the event company was supposed to be separate and not allow its finances to in any way find their way into Team New Zealand. And in fact, they did, and that led to a government inquiry and audit. A lot of criticism about that. So you're quite right. The Event Authority does need to be separate.
Let's go back to the club for a minute, because here's what has to be the real concern. And I hope they're listening to you, the leadership and members are listening to you and maybe watching this show, because you talked a minute ago about the possibility of if TNZ folds for whatever reason. But let's not even have Team New Zealand fold. Let's say that they award the event, that is Dalton, because the club has delegated you and I also agree, they've delegated their fiduciary duty, which is under Kiwi law, under New York law, you can't do. That you can delegate management, but you can't delegate the authority, right? And they have, in fact, by everyone's admission, Aaron Young's admission, Grant Dalton's admission, the team have taken on the fiduciary duty, right?
Well, they wouldn't put it in those terms.
No, but I would. Am I wrong to put it in those terms?
Yeah. No, you're not. But I doubt that Grant actually understands the word fiduciary.
He's an accountant, for Pete's sake.
Well,
he's an accountant by training, isn't he?
Okay. Anyway, look, just put that point aside. I think the relationship between the squadron and Team New Zealand can be described in this way. Going right back to when Team New Zealand was first formed in the Peter Blake, or prior to the Peter Blake days, really. The squadron appointed by contract Team New Zealand to manage and run the challenge, the various challenges that were done, and eventually the defence. And what that meant was that Team New Zealand had the right and the obligation to put a team together, to build the boats, to hire sailors, to do all of those sorts of things.
Operational things,
that's right. And there is a clear difference between the operational rights and obligations on the one hand, and what you and I are happy to call the fiduciary obligations of the holder of the cup, which, as at least you and I know, and I think a lot of other people know, trace back to the deed of gift. And and it is a gift and it is a trust. And so the holder of the cup at any given time has those obligations under a trust. So that's why my view certainly is that although Squadron can rightly delegate, if you want to put it that way, the operational management functions, including, which are quite extensive without a doubt, and including the obligation to raise the money to actually run the team. Although that is undoubted, when it comes to key decisions like the venue, that's a totally different matter. And my view certainly is, and I've read the contracts, the management contracts were renewed every time there was an America's Cup cycle, and they were renewed in the same terms because the contract actually said these will be renewed in the same terms. So I've read that contract. Maybe they've changed the current one. I don't know. They haven't seen that, but I've seen every one that went before, and there is nothing said that could possibly be read as conferring on Team New Zealand the right to choose the venue. So I don't have any doubt myself that it is the right of the Squadron and to choose the venue, and that decision must be exercised in accordance with the terms and the spirit of the deed of gift. Okay. Now, I think Team New Zealand would have a different view. Grant Dalton would have a different view, but I think actually the Commodore and the flag officers would probably agree with what I've just said.
Okay, well, let's hope so. And let me ask you then this, back to the point about if the team, let's don't get into where the cup goes, if the team dissolves or the club, whatever. My concern, if I were, I've been Commodore of a couple of clubs, Vice Commodore, and on the boards, and, the clubs at the bottom line, the directors of any organization, but particularly these yacht clubs, have to be concerned about the corpus, have to be concerned about the membership, about keeping the place alive, big picture, long term. And when I don't know what their assets are, their net worth is, but if you start dealing with a Jeddah or a Cork or a Valencia, Spain, and then there is a problem with the event, with the contract, that the host city agreement, whatever the agreement is that's entered into, even if it's entered into by the team, and then the team says, oh, don't worry, club members, as I understand Mr. Dalton keeps saying, don't worry, we have indemnified the club. We have indemnified the leadership of the club. But Jim, you know better than I that the indemnity isn't worth the paper it's written on. If the team goes bust, how are they going to indemnify the club if the team goes under for whatever reason?
Yeah, well, look, that's absolutely right. And you see, it was actually a point I made when I spoke at the AGM. No one actually took it up, but the point is this, and the leaders of the Squadron say, look, in return for granting the whatever rights Team New Zealand has in relation to the Cup, Team New Zealand indemnifies the club for any liabilities that may arise out of in this case, defence of the America's Cup. Now, 2 points about that. First is the one you've made, that, well, both points you've actually made. The first point is that the liabilities, if the Cup is taken offshore, could be huge. So let's say, for example, it goes to a foreign city who pay a lot of money for the rights to be the host city. Now, I have no doubt that leading up to that contract that will have been entered into for host city rights, there will be all sorts of representations that will have been made by Team New Zealand and by its agents, the people who are out there scouting for a city, as to the potential economic return that is available to the host city for the privilege of putting on the event in return for paying a lot of money to Team New Zealand. Now, if it turns out that economic return doesn't come to fruition for whatever reason, then you can imagine that the host city might look at the contract and look at the representations that were made and say, well, we didn't get the return. In fact, it cost us a lot of money.
Exactly.
Money. And so they then turn to not just to Team New Zealand, who they might would be the ones they're primarily dealing with.
But sue the
But they
squadron as well.
They turn the squadron because Team New Zealand, for that purpose, is undoubtedly the squadron's agent, because it is the squadron that holds the cup and has the right ultimately to decide where it's going to be. Now, at that point, let's say there's a claim there for $500 million or more, and the squadron says, "Well, look, this isn't very nice. We're being about to be sued for $500 million. Team New Zealand, you have to indemnify us."
Good luck.
Team New Zealand, yes, exactly. What assets does Team New Zealand have? First question. Well, they've got boats and they've got intellectual property. And what liabilities do they also have? And one of the points that was made when Mark Dunphy first appeared on the scene and put his hand up and said, "Look, I don't get out there and find the money," Grant Dalton wrote to Mark, and I've seen the letter. And one of the points, it was a very polite letter, as you'd expect Grant to write. But having worked with Grant for 10 years, I also know how to interpret what he writes. And I did say to Mark, well, actually, there's a bit of a poison pill in there. And the poison pill was Grant saying, I should tell you that we have a significant debt by way of an on-demand loan to long-term supporter Mateo Denora, and this hasn't been a problem with us because we have a good relationship, but it is a wild card." And I said to Mark, actually, what Grant's saying to you is, if you get too close to us, and Mateo just might call on that on-demand loan, and then Team New Zealand would be insolvent. So that indemnity, as you say, may not be worth the paper it's written on. In fact, worse than that.
Well, I think for a whole lot of reasons, a lot of people on here, and I'm going to go to the comments because there's a lot of questions and comments too, but we've covered a fair share of it. I can't, and I still think you're going to win this. I think it's going to end up in Auckland. I hope Daltz is just playing the long game, and he's trying to squeeze more and more money out of the government, out of the city council, out of members, out of people like very generous people like Mr. Dunphy and yourself. But I don't know. What do you think? Well, let me ask the hard question. If this thing, we don't know if it's cork. I hear it's not going to be cork. And maybe you've heard newer news, but I'm talking to people in Ireland and beyond. Cork is a day late and more than $1 short, and it's not going to happen there. Julia, you and I, you sat in on all these things we've heard and conversations we've had with various people, including friends in Ireland, senior serious people in Ireland. Spain, likewise. I lived in Spain, as you know, Jim, for 8 years. A lot of friends there, and Valencia has the facilities, but the mayor doesn't want it there. And the Malaga has been mentioned, and I think we broke that news here, and it now has gone very cold, that lead. And I don't know if that's because people don't want to talk to me anymore because they're afraid, we know too much, or if that is just gone cold because it's gone cold. But I think Jeddah, from everything I'm hearing, is still the goer. And if that's the case, what will you do?
Well, if it's Jeddah, that raises issues that go far beyond the yacht racing world. It raises issues for New Zealand in terms of its very fine international reputation as a country that respects human rights, respects the rights of women. I mean, New Zealand was the first country in the world to grant the right to vote to women way back in the 19th century.
We've covered that, Julia, on This Day in History.
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah. Yep. So New Zealand, Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, and Team New Zealand grant hosting rights to Saudi Arabia, and you should actually Google Saudi Arabia's human rights, and what you'll read, sort of report after report from human rights bodies like International Amnesty, etc., expressing absolute horror at such things as daily public executions by beheading people committed crimes, relatively, some cases, minor crimes, and not even crimes, adultery, women being stoned for that publicly.
Stoned to death.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, look,
Yeah,
everybody knows no one has to go beyond Adnan Khashoggi, who was
yeah. And I was
chopped
going to
up in
mention
the
Khashoggi, of
Turkish
course.
embassy. I mean, we all know
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
discussed it on this show. We
Yeah.
know their Jeddah is
yeah.
just not correct. Magnus
And,
Wheatley, who's on here, and Magnus, our good friend and FOSI, is saying it's 100%. It is not Jeddah. And he's talking,
well,
I'm sure he's talking to Alinghi. He may be talking to Ineos Britannia as well. So he's saying it will not be Jeddah. But I'm asking you then, if it is Jeddah, what will you do?
okay, okay. I just did want to add, and it springs in the question of the American situation, the American position, because of course, of the 19 terrorists who took part in 9/11, the events of 9/11, 17 of them were from Saudi Arabia,
Saudis,
and of
right.
course, Bin Laden was from Saudi Arabia, and the victims of 9/11 are suing the Saudi Arabia government. That cases you get to trial, but anyway, by the way. So what I have said, and as a lawyer, I just feel I could not look myself in the face in the mirror if I didn't stand up for human rights. I've done that, I think, in my career from time to time when it's needed, and and I also could not stand by and watch the reputation of New Zealand be just ransomed off or sold off rather in this way. So on my blog some time ago now, when Jeddah appeared as in the short list of 3, I said, well, you know, if that happens, if I have to, I will personally sue the squadron to stop it happening. And I referred to the precedent of many years ago, back in 1983, when in the days of apartheid in South Africa, where the New Zealand Rugby Union was injuncted from sending an All Black team to South Africa in a court proceeding that was taken by a bunch of lawyers, 3 of whom became judges, 1 of whom became Chief Justice of New Zealand subsequently, and they took a successful court action against the New Zealand Rugby Union using a couple of members of the rugby club as plaintiffs. And the argument was that the objects of the New Zealand Rugby Union are to foster and promote rugby in New Zealand and elsewhere. And sending a team to South Africa would not be in accordance with that objective. And quite to the contrary, it would actually damage that objective. And the same argument is obviously available in the case of the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, whose objects are to foster and promote Corinthian yachting, etc., etc. And so there's a clear precedent for that. Now, I've said that if it were Jeddah, I would do that if I had to. As it's turned out, someone else has come out subsequently, and I don't want to mention names specifically, but a very prominent, eminent former judge has come out and said, "Well, I'll do it," you know. So, and maybe, you know, so it's. But look, I honestly, I hope you're right. I hope Magnus is right that it's not going to be Jeddah. But then, if it's not Jeddah, who else is it? Because my information is the same as yours, Tom. I think the Spanish cities and Cork don't seem to have any real enthusiasm.
Well, I think if it's not Jeddah, and that may be a bit of a dodge. It could be Abu Dhabi, it could be Bahrain, it could be Oman, all of which are more Western facing, at least. Well, they probably are all more Western facing, and Oman's a big sailing country now. They've just wrapped up the Youth World Championships. They've had World Championships of the various Olympic classes and so on at Oman Sail, and Bahrain and Abu Dhabi as well, and Andrew Pindar and so on. So let me go back to what I think. It's not, the question has gone by here. Julie Aarons has got a few comments, but let me read this because it's already gone off the chart, so to speak. This one comment from Murray Lamont, who you must know. I was at and he's been a regular on, he's a good guy and a regular here on the show as a FOSI, watching and commenting. I was at the AGM meeting, not sure I have the same read on the room. Agree most want the defense in Auckland, but we also don't want to be defending underfunded. also there have been plenty of suggestions and messages by the committee, your board, of members helping if they can. So bit strange them saying they haven't been asked now. The club talked about costs of even all this sideshow not being recovered to date, tens of thousands of dollars, so they can help pay that first. But that really cuts, I think, to the quick, is that Daltz's argument, and understandably, I mean, I get it. Julie, we've talked about this any number of times.
Yes.
And he is saying, I've got to be funded. My first responsibility and the club's first responsibility is to successfully defend. We're in it to win it, not to go off and just represent and have a grand time in a sailboat race. Why, though, is going offshore going to guarantee that he will not be underfunded? What does he know that the rest of us don't know? And why is he so certain that defending it at home, he won't be able to raise the money from sponsors, from the city, from the government, from Mr. Dunphy? Or is that just his overarching excuse to get it offshore?
I think, I don't think there's any real doubt that the money is available in New Zealand to have it here. I think Grant, protesteth too much, if I can use that phrase. I think he has whatever his reasons are for getting the money offshore. The 200 million, I think you suggested earlier that maybe it's more than 200 million that he's really looking for. That he knows he believes he can get offshore. Grant did say at the AGM, no, look, the amount of money is the same, whether it's in New Zealand or whether it's offshore. So, okay, let's go with that. And Mark Dunphy, I think, has demonstrated that the money, there is no $50 million gap. That money, and sure, there's a little bit of speculation about where it's coming from, and it may well require some members putting up their hand, etc. But the effort's got to be made. And the most amazing thing about all of this is that we're all sitting around saying it can't be found, or at least Grant's saying that. But there's no real effort being made to actually find it. And it's sort of, can do. Grant is very fond of using that phrase, can do attitude that New Zealanders have, just isn't being shown at the moment. Let's get out and let's just find it. And then actually Magnus Wheatley had a terrific blog a while back. I don't think he's always consistent with his blogs, if I can say so with respect, but he did have one a while back, which was
we tease him all. He's been on the show, Jim, any number of times, and we tease him because he is one day that's got to be in Auckland. It's full, and he's watching now, and the next day, or a couple of weeks later, well, and that's after Dalton. Grant calls him up, or he sends him a hard email, and he starts to waver a little bit.
I know, but
he's a smart guy, and he does care. He really hopes. I've talked to him at length. Julie and I have had him, as I said on the show. He hopes very much that it's in Auckland, as it's sounding like do the challengers.
Yeah, well, and I do respect him greatly. But the column that I liked that he wrote was headed "Just Do It." Just do it. That's a Nike term.
Yeah.
Come on, guys, let's just get in and do it. And at the AGM, at the end of my little talk, I said, look, no one in this room knows Grant Dalton and Mark Dunphy better than I do, because I've worked with both of them extensively. I know them both, and they're both terrific, people, very strong achievers. And I know there's a lot of, argy-bargy that's gone on backwards and forwards. But we can get past that. And the way we get past it, my suggestion was, let's get these guys together and with the leaders of the squadron.
Right.
Get a mediator in there just to start the process off, just to make sure everyone behaves themselves for a while, until they get to a point where they find the common ground and they find the common objective. Yes, we're going to have this event in New Zealand. So look, what are the problems? What are the roadblocks? Let's deal with them. So that was my suggestion, and I'd like to think that went down pretty well. And one of the members got up later and said, well, Mr. Dunphy, would you be prepared to do what Mr. Farmer suggests? Yes, he said, I would. Mr. Dalton, would you? No. No.
Yeah, I heard
so,
that.
So that's the kind of, this is not the Kiwi way of doing things, to just refuse categorically and to do so on the basis of some phony false affidavit that Grant read some extracts from cast aspersions on Mark Dunphy's patriotism and bona fides, and
That was
it's
that
not.
was strange, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Julie has been calling for mediation for weeks, and Stingray just said so in a comment. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Julie is a nicer person than all of us, but why is there any chance that'll happen? Is there really any chance of an actual sit down? And it won't be binding arbitration, I suppose. It'll be mediation.
No. Mediation is maybe facilitation. You have someone, an independent person of some standing, who knows how to run meetings and say, okay, well, now here we are, guys. Let's get talking. Let's first of all identify what the issues are, what the problems are, what the positions of each side are, and let's just talk about it and work our way through it and see if we can't find, first of all, some common ground, and then define where the areas of disagreement are. And I mean, this is all pretty basic stuff, actually. There's nothing.
Where's John Fair? What's he up to? Why can't John Fair be the mediator?
John Fair would be terrific. I mean, I haven't seen John for a while. I used to see him out in the harbour when we were, all yacht racing. John would be terrific. But there are other, retired judges. That's a good. Apart from the one who I know who says he'll sue the squadron, you might not use him. But there are lots of retired judges judges are used to being independent and fair-minded. And I just thought I was very disappointed in Grant's total rejection of that concept, and it did indicate to me that he's really, at this stage anyway, not interested.
Well, that's what it appears
in doing anything to get the cup. Keep the cup.
It's certainly not clear, and it's the obvious question of why is he not, and maybe he should give some indication about why.
Well, I think I think he's got somebody, either a rich guy or gal, or a sponsor like Emirates, who said, "I'm not going back to New Zealand. I don't want to go back to New Zealand. You get the cup over here. Do it in Bahrain or Abu Dhabi or Oman, or tell me where, over here, close to me, so I can fly my plane to take my wife to Paris or my boyfriend to, that's what Larry Ellison used to do.
Yeah.
Send, my wife go up to Paris to go shopping, or, that kind of thing, socially and otherwise. Maybe goes to Monaco for, who knows? There's not much wind there, but who knows? There must be a sponsor or a rich guy or gal saying to Daltz, bring it over here, we're going to write the check. Or maybe despite their public utterances, maybe it is Jim Ratcliffe, or maybe it is Ernesto Bertorelli.
It's an ideal.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's an ideal time. Excuse me. It's an ideal time to get that person or that entity in on the game and make a hero out of him or her or them in the accomplishment of the good.
But Julia, what if it's one of the challengers, both of whom can afford to run Team New Zealand, run the event, run their own teams? What if it's Ernesto who's said, look, do it over here. I'll say that we want it in Auckland just to polish it up nicely, but we really want it over here in Europe, and I'll pay for it, or a big chunk of it. Is that possible?
Look, I don't know Ernesto, but I know people who do know him, of course, and like you do. And my understanding is that he actually loves Auckland and would like it to be in Auckland. And I mean, it's a pretty cool place to be in. And
absolutely,
you can go to Paris the rest of the year if you want to, shopping or wherever. But I think Auckland has so many natural advantages for visitors that just talking about the challenges, the challenges, first of all, are paying $3 million entry fee each to start with. I think that might even be US dollars. I'm not sure, but so they pay that to start, and it looks like we're going to have 3, maybe 4 challenges. So there's 12 million. That goes some way towards bridging the gap. Then the other point to think about maybe here is that the challengers are each being required to pay, I think, about $3 million, some significant sum of money, for one of these hydrogen chase boats.
Exactly. That was a
That-
question
that's
earlier.
an-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really strange concept. I mean, why is that expense in a situation being put on the teams in a situation where everyone agrees that the event is so expensive, it needs to be, the costs need to be cut out of it. So why do you now say, okay, well, here's another expense for you, a $3 million chase boat, chase boats. So I would, my understanding, and I've only heard this about third hand, is that if the hydrogen boats were taken out of the equation, well, the challengers would say, okay, we'd rather put that money into the event to make sure it's
for sure.
Mhm.
For sure. If you're just joining us, we have our longtime friend Jim Farmer, the esteemed yachtsman, Queen's Counsel lawyer from New Zealand, live via Zoom today. When you saw my mail pop up a minute ago, we don't normally have that problem when we're on Skype, but Jim said, Zoom, let's use Zoom. I know how to use that. We do that all the time for meetings here in the COVID era, as we all do. And we're taking the questions. We've got a lot of questions and comments. By the way, we're co-streaming this, Julia, as you know. We're co-streaming this today again, like we did last. We've got a new kind of technology working for us. It's to this normal Sailing Illustrated Facebook page, my Facebook page, my Twitter feed, and to our Sailing Illustrated TV YouTube page. So somebody said, I only see 14 people on here. Well, I see there's 63 people on the Sailing Illustrated Facebook page, and we're already over 100 questions and comments, which is celebrated by Restream, as you saw. Let's go to the questions. Stingray is saying the hydrogen boats are a cost being put on the challengers as part of Dalton's sponsorship deal with Toyota. Probably. Toyota is pushing their hydro efforts. Well, Kim Pennell, who lives in Auckland, and there's back and forth between Julie Ahrens, who's a FOSI who lives in Cleveland, the Cleveland area, and she is a staunch supporter and defender of Mr. Dalton and has been all along. But Kim Pennell is saying, replying to some of the comments from Julie Ahrens, Dalt's refusal to work with Dunphy appears to be very personal. It does not lend credence to Mark Dunphy, a CEO of a large and successful organization, being untrustworthy, which is what I wanted to ask you, Jim. Was that a mistake early on by Mark Dunphy to say, to call for, well, I'll come in with the money and I'm just, but I want Mr. Dalton out. He can't continue on. If I'm coming in with my people and my money, we'll run TNZ. Is that what he said? And is that true? And was that a mistake?
He certainly didn't say we'll run TNZ, because I think he has been consistent throughout in saying TNZ is terrific the way it's run, the way it's operated, and we don't want to have any part of running Team New Zealand. What he did, my understanding, is that there were some of the people who he had been talking to who were prepared to put up quite a lot of money as part of the total package, financial package that would come, that he would organise, but who said, we're not prepared to give money if Grant Dalton is there. And effectively, that's what Mark Dunphy was conveying. But he did also say at the time, if Grant Dalton is going to be there, well, then I will have to get some other funders. And ultimately, that led to him actually putting up 20 million of his own money and then underwriting another 20 million to meet 40 million. So, and he said, and that money will be there irrespective of whether Grant is there or not. So it was probably not handled particularly well. And look, you could understand Grant's reaction, but on the other hand, on the other side of the ledger was a really quite vicious public statement made by Grant when Mark said, well, disclosed that one way that he was looking to sell the deal, if you like, to funders was to look at to see whether they could get tax breaks and the like. And Grant came out and said, "Oh, this is terrible. This is disgusting. This is just a merchant banker pulling swift deals," and that was grossly unfair. And so that started, I think, the whole sort of situation where the relationship then quickly
Well, yeah,
deteriorated.
it was the launch and then the relaunch, and it was mutual assured destruction back, as we
Yeah.
used to say back in the
Yeah.
nuclear days. Shouldn't we? I think again. I hope there's some mediation. I hope something comes out of this, where a cool head sits down and tries to get the two sides together, because as we all realize. And these arguments, by the way, about COVID and New Zealand is not going to get the venue until your government, Cindy, your PM, as some people call her, get you out of the COVID lockdown situation. But anybody who can predict where any of us is going to be, whether it's New Zealand, Australia, the U.S., let alone California, where any of that's going to be in the next 3 years, you think you got to pick the best venue, irrespective of COVID and COVID concerns, and go with it and get on with it. And not worry about COVID. But can we shift topics now?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of questions, and I asked you in the tech check about these guys and the nationality rule. We know that by all accounts they have not signed with anybody, including and especially Team New Zealand. This, of course, being Burling and Blair too. This nationality rule, is it enforceable under the right to work laws in the EU at least, and maybe even here in the US if push comes to shove?
Yeah, well, I know there is in the EU, there is certainly precedent that would say that having a nationality rule or restraint of trade, restraints on people offering their services in other countries, that is considered in the EU to be anti-competitive. I think case involving footballers, professional footballers.
And ice skaters and others.
Yeah, and others, that's right. And in New Zealand, under our competition laws, my view, you're asking me now for an off the top of my head legal opinion, which I'm happy to do, my view would be that the markets, so that there are competitive markets we're looking at here, and one of those markets is the market for top professional sailing services. And if you have a restraint of that kind, that would prevent, for example, Team New Zealand employing a top Australian sailor, which they've actually done, but only on the basis that he's been living in New Zealand, and they've got around it that way. But those sorts of restrictions be regarded under New Zealand law as being anti-competitive, and I don't have any real doubt about that.
Okay, well, thanks for the very interesting insight. I think we've covered most of the questions. I want to be sure I think we covered this question from Graham Sweeney earlier on. But again, just given it's really question two, given the membership of the squadron do not appear to be ready to rebel against their own officers, why does Kiwi Home Defense feel it has justified reason for attacking their stance? I mean, it is the club's cup and they're the leaders. Is that the case? What do you think, bottom line, is how the leadership feels today, and where do you think it's going?
Well, yeah, okay. So one of the things that Grant keeps saying is Team New Zealand exists for one purpose and one reason only, and that is to win the cup and to keep the cup. And he, in speaking to the members, he said, so the event will be offshore somewhere, but the cup will still be here up in that glass case. And my response to that would be, well, who cares? If the cup's up in the glass case, who's going to look at it? I mean, if we've all lost interest in the America's Cup, if we have no stake in it any longer, if all the money that New Zealanders, the New Zealand government, the Auckland Council, and all the fan support that for 25 years now has been put in backing Team New Zealand and the squadron, if all of that all that loyalty, all of that investment, if you like, is just pushed aside and doesn't matter any longer, it's we're moving on into another country, another world. If that's the situation, having the America's Cup sitting in a glass case is just worth nothing.
What's the attitude in the country? Because I hear the country's like, and no surprise, is just kind of losing interest in the whole thing.
Well, the attitude in the country, the attitude in the country is one, first of all, of a certain amount of resentment about the fact that as I just said, the huge effort, huge support the huge amount of money that's gone into backing Team New Zealand, if all of that is going to be just pushed to one side and forgotten in the chase of money offshore, well, the attitude is one, as I say, of resentment. But then secondly, that following on behind that will be, oh, well, it should no longer be regarded as Team New Zealand. It should be regarded as Team Dalton or something of that kind. And we've lost interest. We will lose interest.
Well, one of the points that has been made here, Julia, you've seen it in the comments. By the way, the comments, we've got this new commenting scheme. And if you're on Facebook, the comments that are being posted on YouTube, which are not very many, do not come through on Facebook. They come through to me here on the screen, on my screen over here. And then when I put them on the air, but the commenting, there's hundreds of comments and there's lots of people on here watching. We do appreciate all of the interest. But bottom line, Jim, very few places are as sailing mad as New Zealand. Auckland as the venue is a no-brainer. So says Stingray. And John Emmett is saying, without going into politics, there will be another election in NZ before the next Cup, right?
Yeah. I just noticed a question there from Julie Aarons, I think, asking, what stake do you have in this, Mr. Farmer? Can I answer that?
Please.
I have absolutely no financial or other stake in this. And one of the things that has really gone under my skin is Grant Dalton saying publicly now that the efforts of people, a number of people, including me, he specifically named me, to try and keep the Cup in New Zealand, that we are, quote, jeopardising, that's his word, or undermining the foundations of the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron. And at the AGM, I made a particular point of responding to that by pointing out, first of all, that since from the time that I took up yacht racing in 1993 and had my first boat built by Mick Cookson, Mum 36, and hired for the crew graduates of the Royal New Zealand Youth Program, who otherwise would not have had the opportunities, and took them all around the world. In America, in Europe, in Hong Kong, in Australia, in Hawaii, etc., in Italy, England, Admiral's Cup, all of that stuff. I spent, from my own money, millions of dollars supporting the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, and doing it for my own fun as well, of course. So that's what I've done. Now, I don't think my main critic, Grant Dalton, to my knowledge, has ever spent any of his own money actually helping the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron and the sailors of that. By the way, those young guys that I had back then, and girls, the guys went on to become members of Team New Zealand after 2000, when the Team New Zealand crew left to go to Alingi. My guys became the sailors for Team New Zealand, 7 or 8 or 9 of them, and 2 of them are still there. Well, so that's my answer.
We need owners like you in the sport. You're kind of the Jim Kilroy of New Zealand, and there are others. And you think about all of the Aussie leading yachtsmen and women who take kids on the Sydney Hobart race, and then the kids become senior serious people, and they join the clubs, and then they become leaders of the club, then they buy boats. And Jim Kilroy was exactly that kind of person. We have a guy called Andy Rose and a couple of his partners down in Newport Beach with whom I sail, and he takes every young kid out of Balboa Yacht Club who looks promising, puts them on the big boat, because we don't get enough kids into big boat sailing. And you have done exactly that. Tell us why your boats have all been, I guess they've all been named Georgia, right? Georgia Racing.
It's my daughter. That's my daughter's name, and she now lives in London, married with two young children. But when she was younger, she was at a bar in Auckland with some friends, and a couple of young guys came up to her and they said, a couple of young sailors, and said, "Oh, were you named after the boat?" And she said, no, the boat was named after me.
Yay. That's nice.
That is nice. Well, I think the bottom line on this, several have made the point. I'm not sure you and I have made the point, but just thinking about the big picture long term, which, going up 30, 40,000 feet and having a look down on the Cup. And the Cup's been around for a long time. It's a huge success in part. It's the biggest problem with the Cup is the deed, and the biggest The best thing about the cup is the deed. It gets renewed and renewed, but that's when you follow the deed. And I have the sad feeling the deed is not being followed, that the winners of the cup, which is in the deed, as you know, Jim, specifically says it does not become, the cup does not become the property of the boat or the owners or the syndicate. It's the property of the cup, of the club rather, in trust.
Yeah.
For as long as
Yeah.
they shall successfully defend it. And if somebody's made the point, I'm sorry, I don't know who, funny comment Stingray's saying about Georgia. And a great analogy, I think Alan Long is talking about you with respect to Jim Kilroy in this country and many others that have taken kids and put them on their boats. But back to the point, if winning the cup does not mean the cup is going back to the home venue of that club and team, how do we ever expect, big picture, long term going forward, that a community, that a country, that a club, and you're agreeing, Julie,
Absolutely.
will get behind? I mean, when you got behind, and you and your late great husband spent a lot of money on Kayard's team in 2000, as did a whole lot of other St. Francis Yacht Club members.
Yeah.
It was one of the last best mom and pop family
and it was
club back syndicates, and you almost won. I was with the team. We got to the finals of the LVC there in Auckland, Jim. You remember, against what was Prada, and it was arguably the best America's Cup racing anyone's ever seen. It was the finals of the Louis Vuitton Cup of the Challenger Selection Series. But that's an aside. The point is, nobody at St. Francis Yacht Club, if they see that the cup is won by the RNZ, and if they see that after it's won, it goes offshore, and that becomes a possibility, but a reality, and maybe a likelihood, because everybody says, "Oh, I can shop the venue worldwide now, and the club will let us do that," and here we go. I think it might be the first thing in my experience. It won't be the death knell. I won't go that far. It'll do serious damage to the cup as an institution, in my never so humble opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, we've beaten this one pretty well. Julia, any other questions or comments? Jim, anything else to add? I want to do a few more America's Cup slides. I'm taking up a lot of your Saturday morning. It's 10:30 down in Auckland.
It's okay. It's okay. These are Saturdays, so I try not to work on Saturdays. I often work on Sunday, but I try not to work on Saturdays.
Well, let's go to Mark Wharton Reed is, by the way, agreeing. He's 100%. Tom, that is what the essence of the DOG means, not specifically in word, but in spirit. Well, it pretty well says it in word, too, Mark Reed. It is, I hope you were on, Mark, when we gave you a tip of the cap up at the top of the show. It is meant to be sailed in the home waters of where their annual regatta is sailed. Yeah, and as we all know, it's possible to make exceptions when by mutual consent when it's not possible to sail it in the Swiss lakes. Okay, So you go to Valencia. I think Ernesto did exactly the right thing. He put it out to bid in Europe. 60 cities in Europe bid for it, as you remember, Jim. You were on the Challenger Commission and heavily involved. And Don Lunabos is saying Grant Dalton has lost any sense of honor. The value of the cup is a sense of honor. Yeah, okay. There's a lot of back and forth and argy-bargy. You know what? It's a little bit, I hate to say it, but in the political world today, it's a little bit like our Democrats and Republicans just going back and forth with no middle, one or two people in the middle, and everybody on the left saying, "Oh, it's racism," and everybody on the right saying, "Oh, you're Marxist." And there's a little bit of that going on here, isn't there, Jim, between these two sides? And somebody needs to come in the middle.
Yeah, that's why we need to get them together.
Absolutely.
With a mediator, and Julia absolutely agrees.
Many things are similar and agreeable to both parties, and much more than are disagreeable.
And with all due respect, I just want to make this one comment. Julie Ahrens, again, who is a big and strong supporter of Grant Dalton. She's known him since a long, long time, even though she's an American living up here, but she has connections back to the Cup. I think she, Jim, if you don't know her, I believe she was well known to or by or maybe even best friends or beyond with the guy that filed the original challenge before Sir Michael Fay got involved. The gentleman whose name escapes me, who put in said, "Hey, this thing's going to be in Perth. We should be over there." Put in the paperwork, sent the first $25 grand or whatever the entry fee was. Can't remember the gentleman's name, but I think Julie Ahrens goes back, has that kind of relationship and keen interest in the Cup. And we have all these people on here commenting, and there's not a single person, I'm happy to point out again, Julia, that uses coarse language, personal attacks, comes close sometimes, or name calling.
Yeah.
Including, and we have such a wonderful community, Jim, and I hope you can get the group together, or somebody can, with somebody who can bridge the gap.
Yeah, the money's there. Believe me, I reckon the money's there.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what Julie is saying. Julie Ahrens is saying, well, Dalton wouldn't be, he's in favor of Auckland, and he would not be going offshore if the money were there. And I don't believe that. I think there's something else motivating him to go offshore, and I don't know what it is, and we won't speculate further here. Let's talk about this guy, because he's in. We told you on Tuesday, but even before that Ernesto was coming in. Magnus Wheatley was telling us he was coming in with Red Bull. Magnus got a little ahead of he never went public, but he was telling me, it's going to happen this Tuesday or Wednesday, and that was a couple months ago. But he did come in. This is great news. Ernesto looked at this thing when he made this public. It was Tuesday this week, wasn't it? Looked as youthful, cool as he ushered in the new partnership with Red Bull. No surprise to any readers of this blog. This is a quote from Magnus. But more importantly, the new generation of Swiss sailors, the flying generation that have been quietly plying their trade on the European lakes, coming through the foiling ranks. Ernesto is in no doubt that they are ready. Time will tell on that front. And of course, as we all know, Ernesto, when he came into the Cup in 2003 with Alinghi in Auckland, it was his first challenge, and he is the only person to win it
the first time around
as a challenger. And I don't doubt for a minute that he can do it this first time back in. This time he's been gone for 11 years. And his team will be 100% Swiss. They said at the press conference they're not an emerging AC nation. And our mutual friend Brad Butterworth, is there also on the board. He's not going to skipper the team, as some people said, but this team is going to be really tough, really strong, especially with the backing of Red Bull Racing. And of course, Red Bull is not new to our sport. They sponsored the 2013 and 2017 Red Bull Youth America's Cup, which, Jim, you will remember, Julia, you will remember, we've mentioned this in the show. The 2013 Red Bull Youth America's Cup was won by Pete Burling and had Blair Tuke, and I'm not sure who else from what is now the ETNZ crew on that boat. And then they won 4 years later. They won the Cup in Bermuda. So it's cool. There's some other interesting news, as you all know. I'm assuming everybody on here knows that We Are Back was a simple, understated post on their Facebook page. No big press releases, no videos. Now there are 3 AC 37 challengers because LRPP, Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, is back. We were speculating on this show whether or not that meant Pirelli would be back, and whether Ferrari people are saying, Ferrari might come in too. But in their Facebook post yesterday, in Italian, it's translated to English there, the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron has formally accepted the Circolo della Vela Sicilia, that's their yacht club, and Luna Rossa, notice how they are polite to their club, and Luna Rossa teams, notice of challenge lodged on December 1st. Stay tuned. I think that's cool. And I think we now have Prada back in. It now seems quite clear. And 2, they've been around for a long time. This is Patrizio Bertelli's seventh challenge. And okay, one of them he didn't follow all the way through on, but he did lodge the papers in the challenge. So he's now challenged more times than Sir Thomas Lipton, or he had last time. Actually, now he's 2 more than Thomas Lipton. And wherever, and Jim, this is all the more reason why I want to be back in Auckland, so that Auckland gets a real cup.
Yeah, can I mention another thing? Talking about Red Bull, and we know that Mercedes AMG are with Ineos.
Yep.
And there's just speculation that Ferrari will end up with Prada or Luna Rossa. There's such an obvious fit available for Team New Zealand with McLaren, because Bruce McLaren, as you know, he founded McLaren Racing, and he was a famous Aucklander.
Yep.
Auckland racing driver, killed unfortunately eventually. But it's such an obvious fit. Can you imagine Team New Zealand McLaren defending the Cup in Auckland?
Mm.
Mhm.
Now,
And
I don't
that
know,
begs the
just an
question
obvious thing.
about Ferrari.
Yeah.
And maybe McLaren is saying yes. Ron Dennis, who I knew when I was doing the West sponsorship for McLaren back in the late 90s, and Ron Dennis was running the team. And Adrian Newey, by the way, who is now the Red Bull design chief and always wanted to do the Cup, could never talk Ron Dennis into doing it. Oh, that'll be a distraction. That's just too much money. That's sailboat racing is silly. Talk to Ehman, he's the sailor. And no, literally.
Yeah.
And Ron didn't want to do it. Adrian was, champing at the bit to do it. But now Adrian is in, and McLaren is no longer run by Ron Dennis and by his, by the way, Saudi partner, business partner. So who knows if they come in?
Well, and
Ferrari
and Tom,
with product.
yeah, and Berlusconi, who's Team New Zealand's top designer, I understand, is ex McLaren.
He is. Stingray is saying, and the tip and shaft. I don't know if you see that, Jim. It's a newsletter that comes out of on Fridays out of France, mostly on offshore racing, and both an English version and a French version. It's free. I commend it to you and all of our FOSI, all of our viewers, because you can just go to tip and shaft. I guess it's .com. I can't remember. Google it and it'll come right up. It's free. Comes out on Fridays. And the apparent, I got quotes from him. I didn't have time to stick it in the show, but Arno Sarafagas, I don't think that's spelled right, Stingray, but close, who seems to be the heir apparent to be the helm for that team. He's been helming Ernesto's other fast teams, the GC32 and the whatever that other boat is, the F, whatever. Says Alinghi were the first entry after ETNZ and Ineos, and so are the third in line for an AC40, because that's one of the reasons for getting your challenge in straight away, is so that you can get in line for an AC40. You think the AC40s are going to be good for the Cup?
Yeah, I'm sure. But can you just see that next comment, by the way, below the one you just read? Mark Wharton Reed.
Yep.
I believe Prada is naming sponsor again. That wasn't free. So, these are the sources of money that just get brushed under the carpet. I mean, I think the net figure paid by Prada last time, not counting their own team costs for naming rights, was something like $37 million. So, yeah, that goes a pretty $37 million plus $3 million for each team entry. There's your $50 million, Grant, that's missing.
Absolutely. And there's something else going on. There's either Emirates saying you got to do it over here, or there's a rich guy or gal saying you got to do it over here, or the billionaire backers of a couple of these teams are saying we'll pitch in if you'll do it. Something is motivating Grant to do it there, not in New Zealand. I thought, by the way, that apropos this comment from Mark Reed, and I believe Prada is the naming sponsor again, I thought that got denied quickly. Somebody said on one side or the other now, and I can't remember which, that was the case. And then somebody immediately denied it, or so reported. That was the report from Magnus a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not them, it'll be someone else paying the same money.
Exactly. And there, Kim Pennells, who's, by the way, is an Aucklander, replying to Mark Reed, I read that there was a retraction, or clarification on an Italian media forum that wasn't confirmed. It may have been shared. I think there's a negotiation going on, and it's just not yet confirmed one way or the other. Well, sir, this has been an enlightening, at least for me. I hope it has been for all of our viewers. Hour and 40 minutes, nearly so, to have you on the show for the first time.
Yes, terrific.
Anything else? Last word to you.
No, I thank you. I thank you for that. It's a privilege to have been on the show, and Tom, a privilege to make your acquaintance after all those times in Valencia when we, as you say, we shared that we're on the Challenger Commission together. That was such an amazing regatta, that event, and they've all been great too in their own way. But I do look back on that time and your invitations to have how did you used to say? Well, it's about time for a refreshing ale. I think
that was from the late great Bob Fisher, and from Stuart Alexander, who used to say, we should go have a cleansing ale.
A cleansing ale. That was the phrase. A
Cleansing ale
yes.
was the term of art, and that meant to have a beer after dinner and after far too much wine and whatever else. But the Challenger Commission was also unique. It's been a forum, it's been an advisory body, but you and I and Alessandra Ponderese and George, the lawyer up here in San Francisco who was involved with one of the teams, can't remember his name, George Clyde. And what we did, and you and I, with those others, we put around the table a Challenger Commission. And, you know, we wrote that protocol, Hamish Ross and I and others, but that was coming out of the Auckland win by Alinghi, and we were the Challenger of record. And that Challenger Commission fought, we argued, and then we'd go have a cleansing ale.
Yeah.
But it was a good group. And the 2 or 3 challengers were in the hunt, and Alinghi was too good in the first defense. The defender almost always wins the first time around. It'll be interesting if they go offshore. I think ETNZ will have a real struggle to win if they go offshore, especially in light of who's coming against them in these 3 pretty tough challengers. What do you say? Last word.
Well, just thanks for the opportunity, Tom. Thank you very much, and Julia, thanks.
Well, we appreciate it. And Andrew McIrvin is saying, cleansing ale, it's always good. He's a Brit, of course, our doctor friend. By the way, early on, I pushed the wrong button, and I had an Andrew McIrvin lower third for you, which was left over. He was on the show a couple of weeks ago, but we quickly fixed that, too. Emmett, a couple other comments here. Thanks for the enlightening interview. Escrow and GD comes clean regarding the debt. It's an interesting point, David Cook. I think that's what debt is owed by Team New Zealand, maybe also driving this. Gordon Smith is saying, and this is up above off the comment list already, was if the protocol, including hydrogen boats, was less technically challenging, the F1 teams would see little value in getting involved. They would also not get involved unless they believed that they would be involved longer term. Yeah, maybe, but remember too, gang, that the F1 teams have a salary cap now imposed by FIA and are agreed by all of them, so that going off and keeping some of their people occupied with the America's Cup may be a useful thing for all of them. What other comments before we wrap this? I am not sure I like that term. Sounds like a type of enema, John Emmett is saying. You Brits are also anal. What is that? No cleansing ale in Saudi Arabia, Julie Ahrens is saying. Well, it's interesting that Magnus came so strongly on here, Magnus Wheatley, and I don't know if he's still on, that it is 100% not Saudi. And, you know, he's talking to Grant as well as others. Graham Sweeney replying to Andrew McIrvin, I prefer the plural of that. Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. Thanks,
we really appreciate it. Down in Auckland, live via Zoom from Auckland, the esteemed Jim Farmer, longtime friend. As I said, great yachtsman. Turn down his mic now since you're welcome to stay too if you want, Jim, and watch the rest of the show. I'll leave the Zoom link up. But let's get into Sail GP. And as we teased you at the top of the show, most of you will have known what happened there today, Friday the 17th down there. This also from Magnus. He writes so beautifully, and Julia especially likes his prose. I just took a few paragraphs by way of explanation for Magnus's post on his Rule 69 blog today. The build-up to the Sydney Sail GP has been impressive. The sailors, shore teams, and organizers seem all to be well into their stride, and it's a commanding stride at that. The format is undeniably successful, and there's a surety now that this series is not only on the right path, but actually is the right path for the very best in our sport. This is his opening paragraph. That's the hardest thing to nail. Pro sailors are an insecure lot, watching over their shoulder as to what the others are doing, determined to be seen at all the best regattas and all the best places. Sail GP is where it's at right now, and every sailor with cup ambition is in the mix. Well, nearly all, and I think that's right. He goes on to say, after day one, today, what have we learned? Well, just like it should be, make a mistake and you're toast. We can expect that to get ever more prevalent as the sailors get better and fine margins start to decide winners, losers, and crashers. We had a photo finish, we had the cream rising, and we saw the result of a high-level equipment sport when it doesn't quite go right. Nathan Otteridge looked fast and classy in the medium conditions. That's what they all say. The sailors are saying. Jimmy looked slick and competitive And Tom Slingsby punched our usual ticket on the roller coaster, and especially uprange. He's pretty quick in the breeze. The Kiwis are a strange conundrum, and Phil Robertson showed us that Spanish team is leading under the drivership. They call him a driver. I don't like that. Phil Robertson showed us what a young team can do. I'm going to show the video again of the crash that we showed at the top of the show. There it is. Sir Ben Ainsley apparently didn't see the Japanese boat, Nathan Outeridge, to leeward, obviously. Lucky nobody was hurt or worse.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is the B-roll from the video news release. Stuck a fender up there, and just Nathan was interviewed, and he just I hope we get this back to the technical base without the boat sinking. Well, I think there's both heads in those pontoons. But you can see it was a breezy day, fantastic venue that Sydney Harbor is, and no doubt terrific racing. The full video is up if you want to go watch the whole 2-hour show on the SailGP YouTube channel. There are some amazing pictures as well. And I'm continuing now to read from Magnus the Magnificent, who said Nathan Outeridge, quite rightly, was fuming at his nemesis in Ainsley, and it's easy to see how these two will be media depicted in the coming years ahead of the Cup. Nathan, of course, with the Kiwis now, ETNZ, on this circuit. It's meaning they're with them. Nathan's now with the Kiwis in the Cup, and of course, Sir Ben is leading Ineos Britannia, but Magnus, I think, is correctly predicting that there's going to be some real tension between these two. It's an obvious spat to pick, as Nathan's a competitive, no-nonsense soul. He's really pretty low-key. That refuses to bow to the Ainsley Stardust. I thought you'd like that, Julie.
I do.
Huh?
I do.
The Ainsley Stardust. They don't see eye to eye, and this crash, just as Nathan was really starting to get his mojo here at the regatta, is a further souring of relations. From the Japanese-Kiwi perspective, it's oil on the flames and a harsh blow to what was looking like a great regatta. Outeridge has his tail up with the Team New Zealand contract in his pocket, and there will be words for sure. This wasn't in the script, and you rather suspect the ramifications will linger. That's sport. Great, isn't it? And, this is what you want. You want great competition. You're going to have some crashes. God forbid anybody is hurt, because that was dangerous looking, as we said. Here was Sir Ben's reaction after the incident.
Yeah, we just didn't see the other boat. We were focused on America a little bit early for the start at the top end of the line. And first time I was aware of Japan was someone said, "Oh, you got the other boat," which no idea they were there. So that's certainly our mistake, and let's certainly hope all the guys on the Japan boat are okay. And yeah, frustrating for both teams.
Now you see that comment, ring, ring. I am going to endeavor to bring up on Skype live while we're doing this. It'd be helpful if I change the picture so we don't have a black square. But we have, as we said at the top of the show, there's a comment here too from Dirk de Ritter. I think these F1 connections to the AC are just a way to enlarge their design teams on a say. Yeah, I think that's probably true.
That makes sense.
But with any luck now, we're going to get Jody. There he is. Jody, can you hear us?
I can hear you quite well. How's everyone going?
My God, it worked.
Yay.
And there is Jody, not in Auckland, but in Sydney. And I'm going to try, Jody, can you turn your phone horizontal?
Like that?
No, that didn't work very well. You did, and now we got you sideways. I don't know what that, we'll take you vertical. We'll take you vertical. We'll take you however we can get you. Let me see if I can.
Probably have to do it the other way anyway. That'll do. Makes me look skinny.
Now you got to turn it back to, oh, now I got it all screwed up here. Now you don't. Okay, well, we'll take you like that. That'll be fun.
Beautiful.
Jody, what's going on down there?
Plenty going on. It was pretty interesting day yesterday. It was shaping up as some nice racing, and then Ben decided to put a spanner in the works and take Nath out. So absolutely ruined it for them. But yeah, it was pretty exciting. We were on Shark Island. We're doing the commentary on Shark Island. Holy crap! I look like I'm 40 foot wide. Tom, what are you doing to me?
Hang on, we're getting it fixed.
Now I've gone yellow submarine, baby shark.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, so we're doing commentary on Shark Island, so we're right amongst it, which is so unreal. We're literally 100 metres away from the start line, and we heard this almighty bang, and literally seen the Japanese boat when they went down. They literally went down to the windows of their jib, went to the water, and then we seen the Great Britain boat come over the top. The first thing we noticed was the bow pop out under the water, and we seen it was white, so we knew it was the Japanese boat, and we thought, that holy shit, that's big. That's not just a little crash. So
Stingray is asking, is that called Baby Shark Island?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll have to rename that today. Good call. Whoever said that, awesome. Who was that?
That was Stingray.
Oh, of course it was. Yeah, we're on Baby Shark Island today as well. So I think we've got 1,200 people on there today. So it's a pretty cool setup. Everyone gets to be literally the finish line. They came yesterday, come straight at us, and the finish line's another 150 metres away from the island. So it is the best spot to watch the sail. It's incredible.
Well, and you have this terrific view there too, right?
Oh yeah. Like that's I know you've got an overlay, but Shark Island's sort of a fair bit east of that. So we look, when we're sitting on Shark Island, we see the whole city skyline, the Harbour Bridge, Opera House, and then looking up towards Manly, and then the racetrack is literally right in front of us. It's that close that the boats have to go. Yesterday they were going around the back edge of us to set up in the start box because the Inspire kids were out, and like doing some, just some practice race and whatnot in the front of the crowd, some demonstration stuff, and so they were sending the yachts around the back, and then we couldn't see them while they were starting because there's too many trees, but within sort of the last minute, they all come towards the line, and then they're right on us. I mean, we could run up the other end of the island, but I'm too fat and I can't do it. So
let me bounce a couple of things that Magnus also said. You've been watching, but he said about Nathan Outeridge, quite rightly, was fuming at his nemesis in Alinghi, and it's easy to see how these two will be media depicted in the coming. Do you agree with that? Is this artificial or is this real? What's been the reaction down there to that praying and what happened on shore last night?
All that's jeopardy. I mean, all the talk's been about Tommy and Ben, and the rivalry, the redemption from last, the first season or the second Sydney event where Ben just cleaned Tommy up, and so Nathan hasn't been part of the mix in the lead up down here anyway. So obviously Nathan wouldn't have been real happy. I haven't spoken to Nathan. I did speak to Leo, and Timmy Payne came through back into the hotel last night. Leo Takahashi, of course, is
Leo was staying. Oops, that doesn't work. Leo was staying at your place, right?
Yeah, we had him in because unfortunately he can't get into New Zealand because of the MIQ. They're quarantined. So the poor little homeless boy, he stayed for a week. I think he's coming back up. I think we entertained him too much, so he's coming back up around Christmas time. Sorry, Rob, we probably got your boy at home for Christmas.
Yeah, Rob was on earlier.
Yeah, so he was good. He bought himself a new moth or a second-hand moth, so he's been tinkering on the moth and got to go out for a sail on the lake. He's never been to the lake before, so he quite liked it. So getting to be comfortable at home. I might have to give him an uncomfy bed or something. I don't know.
Couple questions. Stingray asking, will Nathan have a boat for today's racing?
Absolutely. He so what the talk was yesterday afternoon, pretty early in the piece, was that Ben actually offered Nathan his boat straight up. Ben said, look, even if we can get the hull off ours or whatever we can do to get you back on the water, we'll do, which was a nice gesture, obviously. Then obviously the rules kicked in, the rules saying that, you know, if a competitor forces another competitor to not sail, you know, that there's things in place. So I believe what the latest is, and I haven't heard how the structural test went on the GBR boat, but they'll have the Japanese wing plugged into the GBR hulls, and the Japanese will be sailing that boat today, and GBR will not be taking part. So that was the latest I heard when I left yesterday afternoon.
Andrew Dolly DeVola saying the mayor of Wanji. Pendar's made a clever remark replying to Stingray. Ben offered Nathan his Stingray. Let me go on to another image here and another quote from Magnus's blog post today. Jimmy Spit. That was Jimmy, by the way. If I put that up too fast, obviously the American team. Jimmy Spithill, meanwhile, is looking mean. He's leading the team that's a coming force. They're the grinders of SailGP, quietly moving, grinders not in the sailing sense, but in the persistent sense of that word, quietly moving forward, but looking strong for the $1 million shootout in San Francisco. It could be one of the most perfect timed runs ever, and Jimmy's relentless competitiveness is looking like a long-term uptrend. The all-star team of Paul Campbell-James, Rome Kirby, Andrew Campbell, Cooper Dressler, and Anna Weiss, or Weiss as you might say, are clicking now, so don't be surprised if it's Jimmy's bank account is the one with the big zeros come March 2022. Fascinating to watch. Jody.
It's a wee bit scary because me and Magnus agree on a lot of stuff, so I'm not sure if we've both got similar brain sizes or what, but I actually picked USA as my dark horse for this regatta. A lot of chat about Ben and Tommy coming into it. Nathan's, you know, obviously with the disrupted crew changes with Leo going on to flight control, Bruno not being down there, you know, it makes it hard. They haven't been in the boats for a couple of months since the last event, you know, and they've got no practice time, one practice day on the harbour here, which was, you know, tons of boats on the harbour on their first practice day. So it was always going to be tough for them to just click into gear, where the USA team, you know, like the Aussies, I guess, and the GBR, they've got a fairly solid group of guys, and Jimmy's just been, you know, ticking away. So I had him as my my dark horse for the event. He's currently equal second with the Aussies. Spain's had a cracking weekend. Phil's had a blinder so far. He's had a 1, 2, 3, and no one was sort of talking about Phil at all because he was so erratic normally. But yeah, he's 21 points.
Yeah, he's in the league.
Yeah,
I've got the standings in a sec. How about the weather for today, day 2? Andrew Dolly DeVola saying a big nor'easter today in Sydney. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, well, that's the chat. It's a little bit cloudy here at the moment, but I believe that's going to burn out, and then we're due to have a pretty raging nor'easter, a slack tide, which will be good. We don't need any more jeopardy on the course with big waves, but not that we get massive waves in Sydney Harbour, but it's you know, the nor'easter right in front of Shark Island is perfect. It's just the perfect angle, and yeah, like look, there's going to be one less boat on the racetrack, which is unfortunate, but there's still plenty to play for. You know, that opens the door hugely up for someone else to for the grand final. You know, this could be the make or break. I mean, GBR are gone now; they won't make it. But
explain. Yeah. We said at the top of the show, Mark Husted was helping me understand the format because it's not clear about what's going on here in San Francisco when the event comes. Everybody comes to San Francisco, all whatever there are now, 10 teams, 9 teams, I can't remember the number, right? And it's only the top 3 teams that go forward to the $1 million grand finale.
Yeah, there's still a fleet race to happen at in San Fran, 2 days of fleet racing, then a finals, like exactly the same as what happened in Marseille, France.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But the only thing is, instead of being a 2-boat final, it's a 3-boat final. So it's still like, when I say it's all to play for with the go in the grand final, when you look at the leaderboard, the amount of points to gain out of one event won't get teams, even if they have a blinder next, well, potentially if they have a blinder in San Fran, they still won't make it in. So I think a lot, because there's such a spread, you know, the Kiwis are having a shocker at the moment. They're basically second last. They've only got 9 points out of this event. So, you know, they really need to step up. But, you know, it could open the door for someone like sort of Denmark maybe, or even Phil on Spain. You know, if he takes this out, you know, it could open the door for him to get right in. I mean, the Aussies were leading by a point leading into the whole event. You know, and then you had GBR and Nath 1 point behind, or the Japanese, sorry.
Yeah, but don't you think that seriously it's going to be Australia, the U.S., and Japan? It's going to be Tom, Jimmy, and Nathan
in the final?
Yeah, I guess it could change here. Somebody, as you said, has a horrific event of those three.
Yeah, you might GBR out; they're gone. New Zealand, you know, they're not having a good one. If Phil takes this out, he gets max points, so that takes him up the leaderboard, but get 10 points for the win. Yeah, so it's, you know, and that's a nice springboard going into one more event, then into, like, if he's there or thereabouts, you know, you'd be certainly pushing hard in San Fran. But
and that regatta, the final San Francisco regatta, is the last weekend in March, 26th and 7th, I think it is.
So what's the breeze like normally in March?
Well, it can be anything. It can, if it's warm and hot, there might be a sea breeze, but normally it's weather system breeze, and it can be really light too. It can be light and shitterly. Oops.
Hang on.
I use coarse language, Julia.
Yes.
You always say San Francisco reliably windy, iconically beautiful and reliably windy.
Well, so that is true between May and September.
We
always qualify that reliably. It's iconically beautiful year round, except on a horribly gray, foggy, or maybe if the smoke is burning up there where Julia's place is up in Calistoga. But no, it's even in March, even in the warm later months of the year, October, November, it can be pretty light. The sea breeze won't develop, but there's weather system breeze in the most of the rest of the year. What time? It's what time there now? It's 9 a.m.
Yeah, just click 9:01 in the morning here. It's I've got to get out of here in about half an hour. Go down to the base. We've got some rehearsals to do for the. They got me on the prize giving guide. They're keen getting me on the.
Are you emceeing the prize giving?
Yeah, I'm emceeing the prize giving right in front of. Should see the setup down here this year. It's so nice. I was trying to get you down there, but I had too much on.
You mean you were trying to get down there to the village?
Yeah,
it's right.
The new Bangaroo, which is a new precinct they've built here in Sydney with a new Crown Casino right on the end, and it's really good because a lot of they bring a yacht in each or an F50 in each day, plug it on a mooring, and people walk around. They can literally get right in and around it. It's once again it's 20 meters off the foreshore there. And then they got a lot of the signage. It's just really cool. They've got a guy down there with DJ, so they're trying to engage people as they're walking past. And it's the last event was probably set up over the yacht squadron a bit, and the boats are over Cockatoo Island, so you couldn't really get to them easy. Where this time they've done a great job of bringing it right into the city, and people are coming past asking us heaps. What's all this about? And it's cool.
Good, some good comments here. Sangmeister's on. John is saying it's good to have Jody back at Sail GP. Don Lunabos, who lives here in the Bay Area, is saying spring winds in SF can be very windy on La Nina years. Are we going into a La Nina? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Pindar wants to know if you're handing out boxes of Sailor's Lager. I still don't have my Sailor's Lager, by the way.
Well, it's funny because Jordan Spencer, who's he's the head, in more ways than one, of he's got a massive head. It's like a meter round. He's here, and I had a beer with him on Wednesday night, and we're chatting about different stuff. And I believe they're having dramas trying to transport their alcohol. Andrew would know better than us, but I don't think it's as easy as just putting a case of beer in a mailbox and sending it over. But
Well, you know, I just want Pindar to know, by the way, I'm back on my mug, on my, it's okay. My OK Dingy mug. Julie, you're back on, did you notice? You're
yes,
back on your
I'm back in
Pindar
Pindar.
mug.
Yes.
Because our TFE live mugs are in the dishwasher.
I've got a bit of a story. I believe when this prank happened yesterday, I believe like Ben didn't see him till the last minute, and Luke Parkinson, who's on the flight control.
Yep.
He went into full damage control, and he literally and you watch the footage right at the very end, the boat just launches up in the bows, and then just sort of slams. I think what he was trying to achieve was to try and just get the bow on bow maybe and take the shock out of it. But the fact that the foil ended up just hitting the bow so bloody hard. And Tim Morishima was on the front grinder facing backwards, and he didn't see it. And they reckon he if you roll the footage off the Australian boat for a bit, you see Tim get off, and he's pretty shocked. Rattled him pretty hard, and he's bloody lucky. There's a bit of protection there with the foil being up in the air and all that, and the foil arm, the control arm that lifts the foil up and down. So there's a little bit of carbon fibre there that can protect them. But I've seen a lot of comments, on different websites and that someone's going to get killed, all that sort of stuff. There's no doubting that this is a dangerous sport. We're not selling opties here, and it is all about entertainment, and people unfortunately froth a bit on the accidents. That's why we watch race cars and NASCARs and all that sort of stuff. People like seeing cars on their lids and sliding around and doing stuff. The racetrack is pretty small for the 8 boats, but we've got the best sailors in the world. I'd love to argue to anyone who you would replace anybody in this fleet with currently in the world at the moment. And we had this discussion the other night. I can't think of anyone.
I think that's really a good point. There, you could argue about one person or another, but especially next year when you get the Canadian team in and the Swiss team, and the people that they say they have lined up for those teams or one here's, I think it's going to be terrific, Jody. Some other comments.
With so much emphasis on safety.
Go ahead.
There's so much emphasis, but it is an extreme sport, and with extreme sports, there's an inherent risk of danger. No matter what, the guys are tethered, not guys and girls. We've got to remember the girls are on board. Are tethered on, so that's good. Where in the Cup in Bermuda, they could fall off the boat and hit foils and stuff. That can't happen. So, and you notice the first thing that the guys did is just jump down into the cockpit. Well, Nathan didn't. He jumped out of his cockpit. Never seen him move so fast. But he sprung out of there like a cat in a roof, mate. He was pretty adamant.
Well, good to have you back at Sail GP. Stingray's asking, how far is Wangi from Sydney? I mean, Stingray could Google that and find out in about 20 seconds, but he wants to ask you that question.
It's about 100 k's. We're about an hour and a half north of Sydney. So yeah, we're not too far at all. Takes about an hour and a half drive once you get the outskirts of Sydney, and then it takes about half an hour to travel 6 k's in this crappy traffic that we've got down here. But apart from that, it's good.
Well, what's your COVID situation now?
Oh, it's pretty rampant at the moment.
I mean, what are your restrictions?
None. Everything's been open in New South Wales. Literally as of the 15th, we can take all our masks off. We can go to clubs. We've still got a QR code in, but the numbers are going up, which was always expected. They did say to us, it's not about stopping the COVID, it's about stopping the chance of you going to hospital. So we've got 95% of the state double vaxxed, which is pretty impressive.
Do you have your booster yet?
No, I only got my second shot I was actually 2 days before the pubs opened the first time. Yeah.
Well, you got to go get your booster now, but you have to wait some number of weeks or months, right, Julie?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, 6 months. They are saying they can drag it 4 to 5, but God, I don't know. Do we keep getting boosters? I don't know. I'm a bit over it.
Couple other comments. The bar karate guys, Chris Bulger is saying, are doing a great sailing. They are indeed. Their podcast is terrific. So I think I told you, Sangmeister was saying how great it is to have you back, and it would be even better if you were back doing the full. I totally agree. Mark Husted, I wish the boy, Jody Shields, was doing the full commentary. Couldn't agree more.
Oh, I
And-
quite like it on site. If Russell's listening, and I'm sure he is, because he's unfortunately in New Zealand. He couldn't get over here, which is so horrible for him. It's terrible.
That's what I heard.
Bloody quarantine spot going back, but we've got people from Switzerland that can get over here and back, and can't get someone from New Zealand. Work that out. But anyway, that's the world we live in. Yeah, I quite like being on site, to be honest. That's nice.
Yes.
It's not as much pressure as the broadcast, and they're doing a good job. I don't think people understand the complexities and what we were dealing with in the broadcast, and it's in the booth. I don't like it in the booth, to be honest.
No, I totally agree. And Andy Rose and I have talked about this. They asked us to do Congressional Cup last year. After we'd been doing Governor's Cup, as you know, for years, and that's how we know Leonard Takahashi. We know Leo and so on. All those kids that have been sailing Gov Cup, but we were out on a boat. We have a media boat like they used to have in the America's Cup. PJ Mont commentary. He was out on the Hauraki Gulf live from North Star.
Yes.
And when you go into it's a lot less expensive, I get it. But when you're in a TV booth on shore in the media center and you can't look around and see what's going on and see the iconically beautiful, reliably windy venue. By the way, you Jody, that John Emmett. I need some more coffee in the seventh inning stretch. As John Sangmeister, who will be our guest, by the way, next Tuesday, says the bay doesn't blow, the valley sucks. And of course, as you know, if it's warm at the end of March, and it can be, not necessarily, but if we have the inland valley, the Central Valley heating up and the air rising, sucking the cool air off the 55-degree Pacific Ocean, then we'll have a breeze.
I just had a joke then, but I'm sure Julia will wave a finger at me.
She might. Go ahead.
I'd like to move to the valley.
Julia? Come on, wave your finger at him.
I didn't do that.
The voice of foiling, Mark Husted is calling you. I'm trying to get off that joke in a hurry.
Yes.
The correct way to spiel his name is Peter Mont Commentary. Thank you, Stingray, for that. Emmett is saying the UK booster is available after 3 months. I had mine after 5 months, so more than 2 weeks before Christmas. And I think that's true here, too, in the States. Last word to you, Jody.
Yeah, look, thanks for having me, mate. I'm looking forward to today. I think it's going to be pretty nuclear out there today. We start racing at 4 o'clock, so it's really 3 o'clock wind time with the daylight saving. So it'll be like right on the pump area for the nor'easter, which will be unreal. 1,200 people on the island. I'm looking forward to it. I'm doing it with Carrie Smith, who's the Australian 470.
Oh, yeah.
Representative in Rio, so she's lovely. She's been heaps of fun. And I'm talking to Julian Crescent, Crescent
is right.
All the SailGP stuff, and there's some massive news coming out with SailGP soon. And I also heard a whisper about America's Cup, which I'm not going to tell you, but you'll all be pretty surprised about when you hear that. So
let's hear it. Come on, you can't tease us.
Can't do it. Sworn to secrecy.
Okay. Well, we'll be watching tonight at 9 o'clock your time, or 9 o'clock our time. That's in here in the West Coast, which is 4 in the afternoon your time, right?
Yep. So a bit after 5, it's like 4:15 or 11 past 4 or something. The first race goes because of the broadcast, and then when it's all said and done, we go back to Barangaroo, do the big presentation, spray some more champagne, present the wheel, and go out and party. So looking forward to that part.
Good.
It'll be great fun. Yeah.
Enjoy it. Thanks for coming on.
Indeed. Lovely to see you.
Much
Yeah.
appreciated.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, Judd, have a great one. Thanks, Jody. There's his SailGP hat.
Aha. That looks good.
It looks good.
Yeah.
You're looking like Ian Murray now.
Oh, yeah, in more ways than one. Don't worry about that.
Okay, Julia, that was nice of Jody to come on, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
Really
Always fun.
Much appreciated, Jody Shields, and he's at, obviously, at SailGP. He's doing the Baby Shark Island. It's actually called Shark Island, but of course we have our Baby Shark segment here dedicated to him. Thanks, Chris Bulger. Thanks for your comment about it being a great show today. We hope most of them are. Just to recap, after day one, Spain, Phil Robertson's leading with 21 points. And then the Aussies and the Americans are tied on 16, and Denmark on 14 points. We'll see how this sorts out after the Japanese team, driven, I hate that, come on, skippered, helmed by Nathan Outridge. We'll see how he does here on day two. I still think, as several of you do, I saw Stingray and a couple other comments saying they think that it will be the big three. I think it's fair to say then that Tommy and Jimmy and Nate will end up in San Francisco as the top three. There's the standings going into the regatta there this weekend in Sydney. And I think you're still going to see those three teams, Australia, the U.S., and Japan on top. But we'll see. As Jody said, one of them may have a shaker here in San Francisco or even today, and that could change things. Going into the final event here in San Francisco at the end of March. Hopefully there is some wind and a lot of wind because it's more fun.
There often is, yeah.
Okay, Julia, I think it's time for our 7th inning stretch. Thanks to the U.S. Navy band. A little loud, but
yeah,
we can stretch.
Yeah.
Okay. I fall back into my chair. I listen to Sleigh Ride, Leroy Anderson's famous tune, performed by our own U.S. Navy band at an event in Washington, D.C. a few years ago. I think it's a nice way to have a 7th inning stretch.
Yes.
And I want to be this guy again. Play the tuba to that song. I don't know how many times. I still know it by heart, but I want to be the clapper. Clapper, yes, she's one of those. Leroy Anderson, Sleigh Ride, under the direction of the U.S. Navy band for our 7th inning stretch. We're getting down here to the end. Let's have John Emmett's report. We haven't gotten to that yet. And a nice report from John.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the FOSI. I'm here in sunny Weymouth again. It's been quite a windy day, and it feels very much like the end of the season. We've just completed the Youth World Championships Oman, and the footage we have here is of a Guinness World Record-breaking beach clean, because environment is a very important part of our sport, and we all need to think about this. So I think little events like this, although they might not make a huge difference big picture, it's all about raising awareness. And awareness is a really important thing, and that's what I was going to talk to you about today, because we live in a social media world, and I think having truth of information out there is something we really need to look at. I think there's a tendency now for people to share things which fit their point of view rather than actually being true. I see these things going around a lot, and I think it's important that we make sure that we value the information we share just as we would do if we were speaking to somebody in person. So even though you might like the message, I think we need to be really careful with the precise nature. So we live in a difficult time, and no special diet is going to make you immune to disease, and no special exercise plan is going to prevent you from getting sick. But having said that, the overall message is to be fit and healthy, and for everybody to have a good winter. And one of the best things you can do is to stay safe and carry on sailing.
Go sailing. Thank you, John Emmett. And Julia, the other thing that, and again, I have it on my desk, to remind everybody that Dr. John Campbell, Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, all say that this is key to take some D3, that it does help your immune system. It does do, or get out in the sun, or both. So I keep it here so that when I come in here in the morning, it's the first thing I do. take a little D3. And John Emmett, thank you for that report. Let's stay safe and go sailing, get some fresh air, and don't get cooped up in rooms with a bunch of other people.
In closed windows.
Closed windows and so on, unless you're double vaxxed. Very good comments, John Emmett is saying. Thanks, Henri Reese. Unless you're double vaxxed and boosted and so on. So, by the way, that, Tom, I set the sound to minus 14 lufs. Is that better? Yeah, I think it was, John, but I also brought your audio down in the video before I embedded it here in the slide. So, no, that was good. Thank you. I was going to make another comment. That opening part of that video is
Hi, Tom,
John's,
Julia.
That's not in Weymouth. That's actually in Oman at the Youth Worlds, I think. It was a bit confusing to me at first. And we'll have a full report on the Youth Worlds, which wrapped up, I guess, today. And we will have a report for you on Tuesday, on our Tuesday show. That was a cool event. Thanks again to John Emmett for that report. As always, we're even, as I said, giving him credit on the cover slide, Julia.
As you should.
Julia Wedekind, John Emmett, and the FOSI, because the FOSI, all of you are such an important part of this show, and we do appreciate it very much. Speaking of, Jody Baby Shark Shields coming to us there from not quite Shark Island, but he'll be there shortly to do the commentary again, the VIP commentary at least, for Sail GP. Those of you who are F1 fans will know that the FIA awards were last night or the night before, and the new world champion, Max Verstappen, was there and got the big prize. But guess who was not there? The newly knighted Sir Lewis Hamilton. Prince Charles filling in, obviously, for Her Majesty the Queen. This was earlier this week, and as many people predicted, Lewis did not attend the FIA Awards. Was that correct or croutonic? Julie Aarons is saying, while you're thinking about that, John Emmett, you are terrific. A great addition. I think she means addition, but he's also a great addition.
Yes.
Julie. Have you ever tried using a drone? Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. While you're all telling me if this other thing was correct or croutonic, that is Lewis Hamilton, not Sir Lewis, not showing up. I thought that was originally a drone shot by John Emmett of Weymouth, and then I realized it was Omani video. What else here? Do you mean work in a workplace, or do you live in an island? Okay, some very good comments. Everybody agrees. We have to be careful with our comments, all of us, including especially us. Nice arm candy for V, James Frederick Bland. J. Frederick, what does that mean? Oh, he's talking about that shot.
Yeah.
With Max Verstappen. Yes, that is nice arm candy, I suppose.
Well, but we don't know who it is.
We do not, unless you do.
I don't.
I have no idea who that is.
But it looks good.
But is it correct or croutonic? That's the question. She's probably somebody in maybe it's his girlfriend. Who knows? But I doubt it. It's probably somebody in the FIA. She was probably the hostess or something. A drone, is that another name for the bagpipes? Sweeney is. I think he should have been there, Gordon Smith is saying. Ted Ryman, Lewis, and Toto were croutonic for not attending. Croutonic, Baton Rouge and Charleston is saying those two have been racing so close this year that if the roles reversed, still would have been controversy, as the Brits would say. Controversy. So it looks like, other than Clark Chapin, who's saying it was correct for Sir Lewis, since the decision wasn't final regarding the protest, timing was off. Is that true? I think that protest had been withdrawn, Clark, by the time of the FIA awards. Steve Gruber saying, did you just say arm candy? That's a finger wag, Julia.
No, it's not.
It's not?
Why would it be?
I agree. It's not sexist. It's just a nice thing to say. She's a very attractive person. And maybe he's arm candy for her.
Yes.
Right?
Right. At least I've never heard it or used it that way.
See, we're old school here. Steve Gruber. That's nice. So what do you think? We've got one correct and several croutonics. I just think, as Paul Henderson has been on the show any number of times, has said, Ted Turner, he always recalls a story where they were racing FDs, I guess Flying Dutchman, and they'd had a long regatta, and kind of the senior serious people said, well, let's Ted come on, and Henderson and Dingsku, I can't remember, said, we'll go out to dinner. We don't have to go to the prize giving. None of us is on the podium. And Turner famously said, and, Melgus, same kind of a deal, said, no, if we were here and they didn't come to the prize giving for us, that's not correct. So let's go to the prize giving. Let's stay here. That's why we're here. We're here to celebrate the winners and celebrate all of us who are sailors.
Right.
And I guess my view, I'm not 100% on this because I don't know enough about what was going on, but I think I've been to that FIA awards banquet any number of times, Julia, and it's a nice affair, black tie, usually at one of the Mayfair hotels, I can't remember. And, it's a celebration of the year. Even if you go and say, hey, I think I was screwed with a capital F. Now you can shake your finger at me. But you'd still go and be a good sport, I think. That's what I say. But tell me if I'm wrong. Lewis was having his hair done that night. Andrew David Cook, one of your best interviews. Thanks. Well done to all involved. Yeah, it's nice. Jim Farmer's just a very bright guy and a nice guy to have. It was good to have Jody pop up. We just arranged that early this morning. 10 digits. I don't know what that means. Okay, we'll carry on here. And I've got a couple more segments here in the D block. This day in history. Julia, we talked about this at the YC last night. What happened on this day in history? Not directly related to yachting or yacht racing, but certainly in today's America's Cup. What happened on this day in 1903? Here's your first and only clue. Do you remember we talked about this last night? Your first and only clue. Right. David James, as usual, is one of the first. In this case, was the first. Oh, good. That's good to hear. James has got it right. The Wright brothers' first flight. Alan Long has got it. Steve Atkins, good show. No buffering issues in my world, which is a huge improvement on FB. Thanks for sorting that out. Stay safe as we are in holiday social life lockdown again. The dreaded COVID is everywhere, it seems. Steve Atkins, who is a COVID recoverer.
Yes.
But back to the flight of the Kitty Hawk, Graham Sweeney's got. Andrew Pindar, Wright. Yep, they've all got it. The Wright brothers' first flight. And that was in 1903. This is, now you know which direction that plane is going? Is it coming towards us or going away from us? You have to think about it.
Yes.
It's going away from us in that shot.
Yeah.
Those wings are in the nose, and that's the tail thing in the back. And seconds into the first flight, I'm pretty sure that's correct. Seconds into the first ever flight of the Wright Flyer. Remember, these guys were bicycle builders and salesmen in someplace in Ohio, right? And they said, oh, we can make something that flies. They weren't aeronautical engineers. This was seconds into that first flight in North Carolina. Orville Wright is flying. Wilbur is running alongside on that historic day for that first ever airplane flight. The Wright brothers make the first sustained motorized aircraft flight at 10:35 in the morning on this day in 1903. On this day in history, 17 December.
Up for seconds.
What's that?
Didn't fly for very long.
Just for, yeah. And then they did it again the next day or a day later, I can't remember, and they were actually up for quite a few more seconds.
Good.
And the rest, as they say, is history. Yeah. Now we got flying yachts in the America's Cup. They fly.
Yes.
I can tell you're impressed by that.
Well, I'm seriously distracted because I got distracted by the engineer's report of the true happening of why the French supersonic,
the SST,
went down. No,
what was that? What's that? Is that a non sequitur? What's it?
No, the reasons for flight and the stumbles that one makes going.
Well, yeah, and Clark Chapin is saying everyone from Dayton will be insulted that you called it someplace in Ohio. Okay, from Dayton, Ohio. Well, I played hockey in Dayton, Ohio, so that must make it an important place. And Bill Haynes, and the first lost bag claim was filed. So Ted Ryman's talking about the Concorde.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
My honeymoon was in Kill Devil Hills, James Bland, where this flight took place on the Outer Banks. Okay. Flyer is heading north. They were from Dayton. A ground effect on foiling boats could be significant. Look at all these clever comments. Huh?
Yes.
On this day in history in 03, now carrying on from that, I have a Bravo Zulu that's a little personal for me, but I want to recognize it because this guy is a sailor. I've known him basically all my life. I haven't seen him in a long time. But this is a photo, Clark Chapin will appreciate this, from 1976. And they're holding the Michigan Youth, the Sears quarterfinal, the eliminations from the state of Michigan, Michigan Inland Yachting Association. And our FOSI, who's on the show, not a lot because he's a busy boy, but our FOSI, Stephen Collicott, is holding the trophy. He's there on the left. He's holding the boat in the water with a couple of ladies that he sailed with from our home club in Michigan, including my sister Christine on the bow. I didn't know this. I found this picture in a YouTube video that he did yesterday here in Portage Yacht Club, our club, now called Portage Yacht Club. Stephen Collicott, Jill Borton, and Chris Ehman at Crystal Sailing Club in Mid-Michigan, and they're winning. I don't think they won a race, Stephen. I was texting with Stephen. They won. They had all seconds. Then they went to the semifinals and didn't do very well, but they have retired that trophy now. Stephen ended up with it, wanted to know if I would like it because my name's on it 5 times. But now they ought to hang it in the club in Michigan. But get this, Stephen Collicott is now Professor Dr. Stephen Collicott, and he is going to become the first Purdue professor to go into aerospace, into space, to become a reality for this Purdue aerospace engineer. Stephen Collicott, an aerospace engineer at the School of Aeronautics, they call it the cradle of astronauts.
Yeah.
At Purdue University, was selected by NASA just in the last couple of days for a suborbital flight to conduct a research experiment aboard a Virgin Galactic aircraft.
Well, that's exciting.
And I remember the kid. I remember Stephen. A nice kid, bright kid. His parents were professors at the U of M, I think, or something. Yeah. And he just was so nice and polite and humble. And he always, I think we all watched the landing on the moon together in 1969 at the club. Mm-hmm. But for this flight, Collicott will conduct an experiment that explores, I'll have to have Clark Chapin or somebody smarter than I explain it, a difficult to model phenomenon in how a liquid that wets a solid surface, almost sounds sexual, less than perfectly, moves in an awkward stick-slip process across that solid surface in weightlessness. And of course, it's important because the phenomenon can be found with green rocket propellants and water in life support systems. In spaceflight, this stick-slip, we got to have this. There's got to be a joke here somewhere. This stick-slip spreading process is important even in meters-long fuel tanks. And of course, Clark Chapin is an expert on it.
Right.
But not in space, I don't think. Anyway, Bravo Zulu to Professor Stephen Collicott, whom I grew up, haven't seen in probably, 50 years. 45 years anyway, who's still this day as a sailor and now obviously going into space. So we got
that's exciting.
Space, that is cool. That brings us to our final segment. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Julie, get your finger ready. Now when these are sent in, people are saying, you better warn Julia. And I have not warned her about any of these, so we'll see what she thinks. This is and I don't know why, this was Jim Palmer sent this, why he was worried. This is a shipping ships. That's an old one, I think.
Yeah.
But why is that? That's no problem. Thanks, FOSI, Jim Palmer. We were talking about that the other day on the show about how they transport boats around. And this dockwise, these type of boats submerge. They float the boats on. And then the shipping ship then comes up to the surface of the water.
Risky tongue twister.
Why is it? Shipping ships.
Yeah.
That's not that bad, is it? What's it supposed? Is it supposed to be like the word "shiza"?
Yeah, probably. But
okay. Well, back to now we get better. This is the Jamaican variant is on its way. Look at it. Those are joints, big joints. I thought that was pretty clever. I can't remember who sent. In fact, I know who sent it, but he has not to be named. Now these came from the good doctor. You'll like these. The French confirm they will. Sorry for any of our French friends. The French confirm they will relax restrictions on UK visitors in the event of an invasion from Germany. No figure away for that? Maybe our friends from Germany don't like that either. But yeah, okay, it's historically significant, or at least kind of. Now this, Julia,
Yes.
I had to use this. You know what this is?
No.
We were debating the other day about whether it's Omicron or Omicron, and of course it is Omicron, but some people suggest that it's Micron.
Oh. Oh.
No finger wag? You know who those came from? McIrvin.
Oh, I was gonna, Andrew.
He sent those in. Okay, that wraps it up. We got the finish line here. Just to say that we're starting to get Christmas cards from a lot of you, and send them. We'll put them on the show. Here are a couple of cool ones that came in the last few days. May Santa bring everything you wish for. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year from UK Sailmakers, Almer Coleus. And now here's a 1-minute video from a famous yacht designer, which is his Christmas card. Have a look. He's been on the show a couple times.
Oh.
Ron's been on the show a couple times.
I always remember him saying, I didn't have any calculations. I just felt.
That's right. Sending us season's greetings. Now that, Julia, is a Christmas card. We should do something like that.
Yes, we should.
Maybe for the show next week. Maybe next Tuesday, because next Tuesday is our last regular show before Christmas. And our guest Tuesday will be our FOSI, John Sangmeister, as we mentioned at the top of the show. John's coming on to talk about the Olympics 2028, about next year's Newport Ensenada race, to talk about what's going on in SoCal in a lot of
lots to talk about, and he's in the middle of all of it.
And
so.
he is. That's exactly right. So he will be our guest next Tuesday. Looking forward to that. Julia, your witness?
Yes. In the spirit of the season, please like, follow, and share.
Indeed, and comments, as you all know, are welcome too, even in replay. Click the bell, you'll get the notice. And I did that today. I hope you all saw that notice when we go live. Andrew Pindar is saying Omicron, an anagram. Yeah, we mentioned that, I think, on the show a week or two ago, that it's an anagram of moronic. Thanks, Mark Husted. Mark made a couple of significant contributions to today's show. Thanks for a great show. Again, love the questions and the debates on here. Yep. And if it is no problem if you haven't been drinking cider the whole show. Okay. Click the bell if you want to get notified when we are going live. That helps. Support us on Patreon, please. Patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated, or send us a check or send us a bottle. Some people have sent us
yes,
bottles of that. What's that famously good tequila?
Yeah, well, we've had a couple famously good.
No, that Casamigos.
Casamigos. Yeah.
And a reminder that our final show before Christmas is next Tuesday. Our regular show on Tuesday. We are off Christmas Eve. Next Friday, we are dark. Well, not dark, but dark in the broadcast sense of the word. And then we will be doing a watch party on Saturday for the Rolex Sydney Hobart yacht race on Saturday night, probably about 6 o'clock, maybe a little bit before 6 o'clock Pacific, which is what, bloody hell, 200 in UTC, 300 in the morning in Europe. But noon down under, at least in Sydney, so 2 in the afternoon in Auckland, if I did all of that math right. Julia, final word to you.
I think we have a wonderful sport.
I think we have a wonderful sport and a wonderful bunch of FOSI.
Yes.
And a wonderful bunch of people who let us use stuff for this show. Thank you all. And 20 shows away, now 19 shows away from the final show. We hope you have a great weekend. And in the meantime, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now.